Due to the fact that there was an attempt to poison the royal family, the Marquis of Lores was sentenced to death. The boy and girl saw their own parents killed before their eyes. Our heroine did not understand why everything happened this way, how they could be accused of poisoning the imperial dynasty. They would never dare to do such a thing. The man who set them up was Crown Prince Dylan von Vasilios. He approached them and said that anger should be held only at one's own powerlessness, after which he ordered to take away Liam, who was the girl's kind, timid twin brother. Our heroine screamed for them to stop, because the guy had done nothing at all and was not even capable of hurting a fly. But the Crown Prince did not listen to her at all and gave a criminal order. Then the young man approached Lenor and declared that now she was the only one left. The girl looked at him and thought about how he dared to do this to her family. He could not be forgiven. As Loris was led to the guillotine, she thought to herself that she had not been a good enough big sister. Liam was constantly bullied, and she didn't even know it. She shouldn't have let the boy go to Fortis Academy. It's just a pity that she realized this too late. If Lenor had only known, she would not have allowed this cruel prince to get his way. Before her death, our heroine turned to God and said that if she could go back to that time, she would definitely fix everything. Suddenly, the girl woke up sharply and screamed loudly from the nightmare she saw. Liam immediately ran up to her and exclaimed that it was so good that she had finally come to her senses. Loris immediately began to feel him up and whisper in shock that he was alive, but the young man did not understand what was happening to her. Lenor wondered what it all meant. They were supposed to be killed, but they turned out to be alive. The guy shouted that she had been lying around with a fever all night, and he already thought that he would be left without his beloved little sister. During training, she lost her balance and fell, and very unsuccessfully. Because of this, everyone was very fussed. The young man added that their parents were simply beside themselves. Our heroine scratched her head and asked for forgiveness, then said that she would be more careful next time. Liam said that if she hadn't woken up, she would have missed the initiation ceremony that would be held the day after tomorrow, although, frankly, he doesn't really want to go there. But the girl said that this was not possible, that the ceremony must be attended, and then asked where he was going to apply. The young man was indignant that she really had memory lapses to the Fortis Academy, of course. Then he exclaimed that this was probably the result of a blow to the head, so the young man headed towards the door to call a doctor. Lenor asked him to calm down and explained that she had just had a nightmare. It had made her a little confused, that's all. To herself, she thought, what does this all mean? They should be 19 years old now. If you look closely, Liam looks a little younger and is probably 16 years old at the moment, just before he entered college. It seems like she went back 3 years. The young man is a kind and smart younger brother, her pride. He wields magic better than a sword. But in their family tree, from generation to generation, men became knights. He did not show good abilities in this, so he was ridiculed by those around him as a talentless and small fish. Eventually, the Crown Prince also set his sights on him. If my brother does enter the academy, the tragedy will repeat itself, and this cannot be allowed. The guy said that if he could wield a sword like her, everything would be different, despite the fact that they are twins. Why are there so many differences between them? If the girl had been born a boy, everything would have been completely different. Suddenly, something dawned on her, and she screamed that why hadn't she thought of this herself? After which she pulled her younger brother towards her and began to whisper something in his ear. After listening to her carefully, Liam objected that it was too risky. If they were discovered, the consequences would be serious. But Lenor replied that everything would be fine, no one would know anything, and that he should just trust her. After some time, our heroine suddenly opened the door to her father's office and announced that she had something to talk to him about. But as soon as the man saw her, he did not listen, but simply hugged her tightly, after which he began to lament whether everything was okay with her and whether the fever had gone away. But the girl said that he would simply strangle her now. When her dad let her go, Lenor noted that she must have made him worry a lot, but now everything is fine and there is no need to worry. After which, she declared that she had a serious conversation with him and headed towards the swords. Taking one of them, she put it to her hair and said that she had thought for a long time about what if it weren't for Liam, but she had entered the academy. After which she abruptly cut off her long, beautiful hair and announced that she would enroll in Fortis herself instead of her brother. Sometime later, the girl was already looking at the country's main training center for knights and magicians. There are only 50 places for boys in the knighthood faculty. And at the Faculty of Magic, there are 50 places for both boys and girls. The threshold for the academic year is high. Only 150 people overcome it. Lenor was determined to do everything possible and to protect the happiness of their family, which the Crown Prince had encroached on. When she first said that she was going to the academy, her brother and father were completely horrified. The man shouted, "What kind of nonsense is this? Next year she has a wedding planned with the Duke of Vergman." And despite this, the daughter dared to cut off her beautiful long hair. It was so wonderful, why do that? The daughter asked her father to listen to her carefully. Chivalry is not for Liam at all. His talent is magic, and he must have noticed it too. The Pope objected that in the Lor's lineage all the men were knights. If not her brother, then who would become the head of the family? The girl replied that she would become an heiress, change into a man's suit and become Liam Loras, after which she would receive the necessary knowledge and skills at the knightly faculty. That is why our heroine cut her hair, to look as much like a guy as possible. The father could not stand it and shouted, "What is she even talking about? Doesn't his daughter know that chivalry is only for men, and that she, a girl, won't even be allowed near such a place?" Lenor exclaimed that she would not be found out, she would be very careful. Dad replied that she could say such things as much as she wanted, but it was useless. Besides, she should be the one learning how to run a house. Our heroine shouted that Liam should do this. While she would attend the Faculty of Knighthood, her brother would attend these classes instead of her. The young man, of course, was indignant, but did not argue strongly. The man became completely furious and shouted that none of this mattered, since he was categorically against it. If they change places and each live their own way, then sooner or later it will be revealed and the Lor's family will come to an end. As the current head of the family, he can never allow this to happen. His daughter is a girl. She does not need to hold a sword in her hands, because her happiness should lie in family life. Our heroine said that she would now clarify the situation a little. A woman's happiness is not limited to getting married. Plus, Duke Vergman is unlikely to accept her with such short hair, after which she shouted that she would definitely take care to glorify their family and that her father would allow her to attend the academy. Before her eyes flashed the terrible picture of her family being beheaded, and Lenor thought that she could not allow this tragedy to happen again. Unexpectedly, the man replied that it was okay, but only on one condition. She only had 1 year. If during this time the daughter cannot prove that she is suitable for the role of heir to their family, then she will be immediately returned home and married to the Duke. The girl thought to herself that finally everything worked out, and perhaps she was too aggressive, but at least she got the desired permission. What was really funny was that her clothes fit her little brother perfectly. Upon seeing her, the girls already started discussing how handsome this guy is. I wonder what family he is from. Our heroine noted to herself that at least the girls didn't suspect anything. It was good since she couldn't stand out. The last time she spoke to her brother, he said that he ran into the Crown Prince at the initiation ceremony. She should be very careful not to get involved in a conflict with him in order to avoid death in the future. Suddenly, a female squeal was heard. The girls were happy that they would finally see these beautiful young men and simply could not believe their happiness. Mr. Arnold was shining brighter than the sun today and was very smiling. Some girls wanted to catch Mr. Eldeca's cold gaze on themselves. Mr. Kyle was in a depressed mood, but still remained wonderful. And His Highness Crown Prince Dylan looked very noble. The rulers of the academy were called Phaesius, namely those who support their country. The bloodline of the mages of the Krishia Duchy, the bloodline of the knights of the Osman Duchy, the bloodline of the Bahart Duchy responsible for governing the country, all of them have served the emperor for generations. They are the 3 main dynasties that support this country in every way. The heirs of each of these families entered the academy last year, and the Crown Prince too. It must have caused a stir. Neither the students nor the teachers have any power over them. In fact, it is these 4 who control it. That is why they were called Phaesius. Only now, that very young man, about whom the girls dream so much, falsely accused and executed her family. For the sake of Liam, she must, if possible, avoid contact with Dylan. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking that there were fewer joyful cries. What was the matter? Then I heard some girls admiring some handsome young man and discussing that he was apparently new, since they had not seen him before. The prince immediately turned to him and asked if he was from the knightly faculty. Our heroine was very confused and couldn't even collect her thoughts to answer. The young man noted that he was somehow too tender. Is it really true that in their time, even such little ones have a chance of being admitted? And as a bonus, it comes with a female face. It seems that the faculty of chivalry is no longer valued at all. The boys shouted that he should leave him and go watch the show. But the crown prince was not going to leave so easily, so he took her by the chin and asked how he could hold the sword with such thin hands. The girl thought to herself that it could be worse, because she wanted to avoid their meetings if possible, but the root of all evil, Dylan Vasilios, still clung to her. His Highness noted that the boy looked rather impudent and asked his name. Hearing the name Lors, the guy muttered that she had heard it and she was not aware that there was an ill-mannered girl in their family who had not yet married. A beast-like girl who loves to swing a sword at men, and Bergman is going to be her fiancé. Why did he even decide to choose her? Lenor thought to herself that she just wanted to punch him so badly, but she needed to restrain her ardor. Dylan said he doesn't like his look, but the guy is pretty funny. After which he sharply put his sword to her face and said that he was challenging her to a duel, and after victory, the young man would become his slave. Our heroine thought to herself that how did she even get to this point? He is a real tyrant, not a crown prince. The young man asked if he was scared or if his sword was just a decoration. How could a weakling like him become the next head of the family? It seemed the Lors family had come to an end. The girl thought to herself that one of the most powerful families would disappear from the face of the earth. She didn't care if he insulted her, but she would not allow her clan to be mocked. Therefore, she suddenly took out her sword, held it up to his face, and replied that she accepted his challenge. And after her victory, the young man will reconsider his words spoken earlier. Dylan replied that they had agreed. In fact, the boy was too self-confident. When the battle began, Eldika noted that it was better to stay away from them. Meanwhile, the crown prince was thinking that although he had a woman's face, he had a lot of strength and he couldn't be allowed to win. Lenor mentally addressed him and said that she was inferior to no one in swordsmanship. Our heroine often defeated the strongest male opponents. They always had very mixed feelings, as they had never lost to a girl before. One of them noted that she had won over knights of high rank, and this meant that Loris was truly outstanding, which is why he felt sorry for her, because if she had not been a woman, she could have become a famous knight. Dylan thought to himself that this was to be expected from a member of such a famous family. It was surprising that this guy remained out of the public eye. The girl thought to herself that she had to become stronger for the sake of her family, for the sake of her brother, so she would never lose. Literally a moment later, our heroine managed to bring the crown prince to his knees and put a sword to his throat. His friends, who watched the entire battle, could not believe that anyone could defeat His Highness. Lenor noted that the victory was hers, so he should fulfill his promise, let him rethink his statements that their Lors line had come to an end. The young man replied that he was keeping his word, but he shouldn't get too cocky ahead of time, since he was lucky in only one duel. Then he shouted to his boys that it was time for them to move on. Our heroine was very angry at the crown prince's words that she was just lucky. On the way, she thought about how it was only the first day of school, and already problems had arisen. Lenor had sworn not to get involved with this guy. But it still came down to a duel, and now his attention is completely focused on her, and yet it is Dylan's fault. He shouldn't have ridiculed her family. As soon as she entered her classroom, those present immediately began to whisper, and the girl noted that, apparently, the gossip did not take long to appear. Our heroine, of course, expected such an outcome, but no one wants to bring trouble upon themselves. However, Liam was also lonely and could not make friends. But for her, everything should be the other way around. The girl is not going to give up. It is necessary to make every possible effort so that she has at least one friend. Suddenly, some guy came up to her and exclaimed that he saw that duel. It is simply amazing how the boy dealt with the crown prince, after which he introduced himself and said that his name was Agni. Our heroine thought to herself that she really already had a candidate for a friend. The young man realized that he must be from an aristocratic family and began to apologize for having addressed him so disrespectfully. The girl replied that there was no need to worry so much. Everyone should be equal in class. Agni said that everyone around him was gossiping, that it was better not to mess with him, but he thought, why not? Lenor didn't really understand what it all meant and wondered what everyone was talking about. From that moment on, they spent quite a lot of time together with their new acquaintance. The guy turned out to be very friendly and optimistic. Liam would certainly be happy to have such a wonderful friend. And so, a few days after that exciting first day of school, our heroine was walking down the corridor. She thought that she had stayed in the library longer than she had expected. Agni must have been waiting for her. But suddenly Lenor noticed some kind of crowd near the fountain. Those present were lamenting that it was simply terrible, and he did not obey Phaesius's order. Coming closer, our heroine tried to see what was going on there. Seeing that they were making fun of her friend, the girl immediately ran to him screaming what they were doing. But the crown prince suddenly thrust his sword in front of her and did not let her go further. The girl screamed, asking what happened and why the young man was in such a state. Dylan replied that it was because this guy ignored his order and dared to communicate with such scum as he was. Lenor immediately remembered Agni's words about people gossiping and that it was better not to mess with him, and exclaimed that it was really only for this reason. The crown prince replied that people who do not do what they are told must be punished. This guy only suffered because of him. Our heroine did not pay attention to his words, but ran up to her friend and tried to help him, saying that she would now take him to the medical center. The young man hissed that how dare he ignore him. It seemed he had become completely insolent, after which he ordered his guys to act. Seeing the swords in their hands above her head, the girl thought that they were going to kill her now. But as soon as one of the young men struck, a protective sphere appeared around our heroine. The girl did not understand where this magic circle came from and who made it. It was Kyle who said that the crown prince was going too far. The crown prince became very angry and shouted that there was no need to cross his path. Our heroine did not understand why this man suddenly decided to save her. It was somehow strange. Arnold immediately flew up to them in order to defuse the situation and shouted for the two to stop arguing. After which the young man asked whether there would be any problems on Eris tomorrow. Then the crown prince looked at the girl and said that he had indeed done wrong. Would he forgive her? While Lenor was completely confused, the young man added that as an apology, he would like to invite her to Eris. Everyone present was also very surprised and wondered whether this guy would go to the tea party, and why exactly he would go. The guys would also like to go there. Dylan continued to say that today he really crossed the line and he regrets it very much. The girl looked at him and did not understand what was going on, why he had changed his mind so abruptly, and what he was even thinking about. The guy added that if she agreed to join the tea party, then he would be guaranteed a bright future, and he was sure that the Marquis of Lore would be delighted. He was not going to reject such a tempting offer. Lenor thought to herself that she had no right to refuse him because of her status, but she had no idea what he was planning. Therefore, she said out loud that she would gladly accept His Highness's invitation. The guy replied that it was great, and that he would be waiting for me tomorrow at 16 o'clock in the pavilion in the Eastern Garden. Eris comes from the word aristocracy. It is the central body of the academy. Its members are only the chosen ones. Its members are considered to be the persons of the academy, and its membership includes students from noble families, 4 of whom are members of the Fascios. This reception is held regularly, and all aristocrats want to get there. Having visited it at least once, the girl's popularity increases significantly. Her advantage is recognized by the surrounding ladies, and she becomes the center of attention in society. A man is guaranteed a carefree future, and after graduating from the academy, he has every chance of taking the elite path of bureaucracy or knighthood. This event, first of all, increases one's own importance. While taking a shower, the girl thought that she hoped that Agni was okay. After what happened, she took him to the medical center, but the teacher told her to go change her wet clothes and tidy herself up. You could say she was kicked out. Our heroine hopes that the shower is safe, because it is located in a separate and uncrowded building. Plus, she locked the door. She felt very sorry for her new friend, who had received so many injuries because of her. A little more and he could have died. Also, will her friend want to talk to her again when he comes to his senses? She didn't understand what Dylan was planning. She had a bad feeling and really didn't want to go to this tea party. When the girl, being naked, suddenly opened the curtain, she saw a young man in front of her. This youth was Lord Kyle, who belonged to Phaesius and was a friend of the crown prince. Our heroine quickly covered herself and began to think to herself that he had really noticed. But how did the guy get here? She had locked the shower with a key. The young man looked at her carefully and stated that this meant that she really was a girl. Lenor couldn't believe that she had taken all the precautions, but she was still found out and by a member of Phaeacius. After some time, the young man thought that it turns out that instead of her younger brother, who never learned to wield a sword, she was attending the academy, which was quite bold. Our heroine began to beg him on her knees not to tell anyone about this. The young man asked what the man whose place the girl had taken was doing. She replied that she was learning housekeeping instead of her. Suddenly, the guy laughed loudly and said that this was something new. While the guy was bursting into laughter, Lenor was thinking that Kyle Chryssia was kind of weird. The young man asked if she thought she was crazy. Few people would raise a sword to Dylan. It's stupid, but funny. Our heroine looked at the young man with a pleading look and asked if he could keep her secret, but she thought to herself that if it were revealed, the Lor's family would come to an end. She couldn't let everyone know her true identity, so she exclaimed that she would do anything, just don't tell. When the young man replied that it was okay, the girl could not believe that everything turned out to be so simple. The young man added that he would keep her secret, but only on one condition. He will share this information with everyone if he suddenly gets bored, so she will have to entertain him. Lenor thought to herself that this terrible man had decided to take advantage of her weakness. After some time, our heroine walked down the corridor and felt very depressed. Suddenly, a crowd of guys appeared in front of her and asked if he was the one who got an invitation to the heiress tea party. They had dreamed about it all their lives. How did it happen to him? The girl thought to herself that they had all changed in an instant, although up until that moment they had completely ignored her existence. It was clear that it was because of Eris, but she didn't think that it would affect her life so much, after which she asked if her friend Agni had already returned from the medical center. The guys answered that no, he has serious injuries and he should rest all day today. Lenor thought that if the tea party went without incident, she would definitely visit him and apologize properly. The next day, our heroine arrived at the appointed time at the place where she was invited. The crown prince noted that he still decided to come here and was not even scared. Dylan gives him credit for his courage. The girl replied that this was an invitation from His Highness and how could it be ignored? Everyone present looked at her with great interest, and she noted that these were the current members of Eris, and being here was like being thrown into a cage with a lion. In order to avoid surprises, it is better to start preparing for the worst outcome. The crown prince said that he was welcome to the tea party and that everyone else should greet him with all their hearts. When the girl was about to sit down at the table, the young man said that her place was not there, after which the young man turned to the side where the waitress was standing. Lenor asked what this all meant. Wasn't he invited to tea? The guy replied that, of course, he was invited, but only as a waiter. Our heroine finally understood what he had planned. The Marquis's eldest son would serve. It was shameful, and he had invited her there only to have a good laugh, but she needed to control herself. It is logical that in this place no one will take her side, so there is no point in arguing with them, because that is just what he is waiting for. Therefore, she said that as he understood, he should simply serve them and he was ready to carry out any orders. Kyle noted to himself that, as he thought, the girl was quite interesting. In essence, serving the table is a maid's job, although Lenor was only trained in housekeeping. But this does not mean that she has no experience at all, so everything will be done in the best possible way. Then our heroine turned to the waitress and asked what she should do, after which she added that there was no need to worry so much. Let him say whatever he wanted. He would not reproach her for giving orders to him. A little embarrassed, the girl asked if, in that case, she could serve the gentleman from Phaeacius. Lenor exclaimed, "Of course," and noticed that one cup was different. The maid explained that this was His Highness's personal cup. Our heroine did not waste time and took boiling water to pour it into the teapot. Those present noted that he was really coping. One of them said that the guy was the son of a marquis, after all. While pouring tea, Lors thought to herself that, no matter what they said, she was good at more than just wielding a sword. She loves to drink tea, so she knows all the intricacies of preparing this divine drink. This cannot but charm other people of all her manners. This is the only one for which she has always been praised. The young man watched all this and was clearly very irritated by it. As she brought him the cup, Lenor thought to herself that she was really different from everyone else. The guy putting himself above just because he was the crown prince. In the past, at this time, there were already cries that this guy had poisoned His Highness. The young man shouted that it was not his doing and that he had not added any poison, but everyone was indignant that he dared to justify himself. Then our heroine began to worry that this story could repeat itself this time. It was because of this situation that her younger brother was expelled from the academy. How could she forget about it? It could probably happen again. Just don't tell her that the fact that she went back to the past didn't change the future. Meanwhile, the young man raised his cup to his mouth and said that the heiress tea party could be considered open. Without wasting any time, our heroine quickly began to run towards him. After which the girl snatched the cup from his hands and began to drink from it herself. Lenor immediately began coughing up blood and noted to herself that there was poison in the tea after all. When Loris began to fall, the young man caught her so that she would not hurt herself. Our heroine looked at him and thought that the prince was cold-blooded, but even he was sometimes worried. If poison had been put into the cup, the first person to be suspected would be her, so she had no choice but to drink the tea herself in order to prove her innocence. Everyone present was in complete shock and did not understand how something like this could have happened. The crown prince immediately had a picture before his eyes of his mother coughing up blood in the same way after drinking tea. Kyle immediately ran up to them and started doing some magical manipulations. It dawned on Eldika that since this guy could heal, this was a very lucky turn of fate. The young man replied that there was nothing special about it, and he simply provided first aid, after which he picked up our heroine in his arms and said that he would take her to the medical center. Arnold noted that this guy had saved someone and that it would probably rain tomorrow, which, according to a Japanese proverb, means learning a useful lesson from a situation. The young man approached Dylan and asked if he was okay. The crown prince muttered that he was. Then the young man shouted for everyone to stay in their places. They would check everyone who could have added the poison. Meanwhile, Kyle was arguing with Lenor, who was unconscious, that if he hadn't been there, she might have died, and it would have been revealed that Liam was, in fact, not a guy. Apparently, she realized that the tea was poisoned and decided to drink it. The girl is really very reckless. Then he began to think that it was definitely not she who had added the poison, but that she had practically been set up. The criminal's main target was the crown prince, and he planned his secret murder. And they also set their sights on his favorite. He will make this person regret his actions until his death. After some time, when our heroine came to her senses, she did not understand where she was. Suddenly, a young man's voice was heard nearby, stating that she had already woken up. The girl immediately jumped up and exclaimed in surprise what he was doing next to her bed. The young man replied that there was no need for all these standard phrases. It would be better to let him explain what had happened. Lenor didn't understand at first that she had to explain, but then she remembered that she drank that poisoned tea. Apparently, he suspects her. Our heroine did not understand what to do in this situation, because now she could be executed again. The young man looked at her carefully and seriously asked if he had added the poison. She immediately screamed that no, and thought to herself that she had to deny any of his accusations. The crown prince asked that, as he realized that the tea was poisoned, that was why the boy drank it. Lenor didn't know what to do, because she couldn't say that she heard this from Liam in her past life. Nothing better came to her mind than to shout that it was her intuition that had worked. His cup was different from all the others, and he had a bad feeling about it. She thought to herself, who had put the poison in her mouth, no one would confess, but at that moment she couldn't think of anything better. The young man hissed that it was really only because of this. There was no need to joke like that. Our heroine noted with fear that the young man was very angry. His Highness became furious and shouted that this was really the only reason why he had committed such a stupidity. A little more, and he would have been gone. After which he calmed down a little and added that the guy clearly held a grudge against him, but why did he suddenly decide to save him? Dylan remembered his mother and thought that he never wanted to see anyone die from poison again. Our heroine did not understand why he had such a suffering expression on his face. After which she replied that because he is a knight, and even if the crown prince hates him, first of all, the guy is a student of the knightly faculty. He entered the academy in order to protect his family, even if it meant putting himself in danger. In the future, due to his duty, he will need to protect his Highness, so it is better to start doing this right now. Dylan was very surprised and thought to himself that despite the terrible things he had done to him, the guy had risked his own life in order to protect the crown prince. Suddenly the guy shouted that he should never do that again, that he shouldn't be so frivolous about his own life. If he sees a young man drinking poison in front of him again, he will kill him before the substance begins to take effect. The girl cautiously replied that it was okay, but she wondered to herself what he had meant, whether the future had really changed, and she had escaped execution after all. His Highness added that, however, he could not help but thank him for his salvation. Lena Lee completely stopped understanding what was going on. Could it really be that the Crown Prince had just thanked her? The young man hissed that even if he thanked him, he didn't have to make such a face. Our heroine noticed that the Crown Prince blushed and suddenly laughed. This suddenly relieved all the tension and made her very happy. The young man first screamed, "What is he even laughing at?" but then noted that when this guy smiles, he is surprisingly cute. After which he suddenly realized that he had really just thought the guy was cute. The next day all the girls admired that he was the savior of His Highness Delana and that he had such graceful features. Agni exclaimed that Liam is so cool and has become very popular, and our heroine asked what was going on. The friend explained that he fell ill because of the poison he drank instead of Dylan. Now the Academy talks about him as a hero who saved the life of the Crown Prince. Lena Lee didn't understand what other hero she was talking about when everything had changed so abruptly. She wanted to behave as quietly as possible so that Dylan wouldn't pay attention to her. But everything turned out completely the opposite. Agni did not understand her confusion and said that this was excellent. Now he was recognized by Phaseus. Doesn't the guy deserve this status? When he was beaten, he thought he would die. But his brave friend saved the young man, by the way. They were both chosen for the Battle of Swords and Magic, and all thanks to him. The girl thought to herself that despite the fact that he was in a difficult situation because of her, they still remained good friends, and this was very great. Then they shook hands and decided that they should give all their strength to this battle, but first they needed to train. Selected members of the 4 academies, including Fortis, risk the pride and honor of their school at an annual meeting where participants compete in strength or magic. It is no exaggeration to say that those who study in these academies are diligently improving themselves for the sake of this Congress. And all because the winner gets a place in the Imperial Guard. Now that the girl has been selected, she must live up to the name of the Lors family, and finally get her father to recognize her as his successor. Meanwhile, some young man was spying on them and noted that this young man was clearly acting like a star. Suddenly they met Eldika and Kyle, who asked how our heroine was feeling. She replied that everything was fine and apologized for the inconvenience. The young man replied that the identity of the criminal who added the poison was currently still being investigated, but they would definitely find out who did it. The girl replied that she understood everything and thanked them for it. She thought to herself that the criminal who framed her younger brother was never revealed. What kind of person he was. Eldick said that the poison didn't kill him, so he's glad that Kyle was able to get him medical help in time. When it dawned on Lena Lee that Krishya had given her the antidote, she immediately began to babble that she didn't know how to thank him. The young man replied that there was no need to worry, everything was fine, and he whispered in her ear that now she would have to entertain him even longer. After which the young man waved his hand and said that they would see each other at the training for the Chosen Ones. Our heroine wondered what Kyle was thinking about. He knows her personality, and the girl can't fail in front of him. Agni exclaimed that Liam is really cool for being able to communicate so casually with Phaseus, after which the friend added that he personally is still afraid of them. Lena Lee responded that she actually still gets nervous around them. Then she exclaimed that she seemed to have forgotten something, so she would go back and get it, and he should go without her. The young man shouted that it was okay, but he shouldn't be late for the training of the Chosen Ones. After some time looking at the door to the locker room, the girl thought that, in theory, there should no longer be anyone there. Then she mentally asked Agni for forgiveness for lying about the forgotten thing, but she simply couldn't change clothes with everyone else. At such moments, our heroine felt all the inconveniences of disguising herself as a man. While Lena Lee was thinking about how she would quickly change her clothes and catch up with her friend, someone suddenly grabbed her from behind and covered her mouth with their hand so that she wouldn't scream. One of the 3 unfamiliar guys noted that it turned out to be easier than he thought and everything went without any extra hassle. The girl did not understand what kind of people these were, and it seemed they were not students of the academy. The young man said that he had nothing against him. It was just an order from the customer, so he would have to hurt him a little. Meanwhile, everyone was informed that the training session would begin very soon. The Crown Prince wondered why this young man had not yet come. But then His Highness quickly came to his senses, because this was absolutely none of his business. Alarmed, Agnes ran up, began to look around and realized that his friend was not there either. Kyle asked who he was looking for. Liam, he was with him. The young man was very afraid of Phaesius, but he cried out that he could not find his friend anywhere. The guys didn't understand what he meant. Where could Loris have gone? The guy said that on the way here, Liam realized that he forgot something, so he went back. He was waiting for him in front of the training ground, but he didn't come, so he went to look for him. And not far from the locker room, the guy only found his sword lying on the ground. Dylan found this very strange, since what student of the knightly faculty would take off his weapon? Arnold asked thoughtfully if this didn't seem too strange to them. The young man asked if he had noticed anything suspicious in the area. Agnes replied that he had only noticed a crowd of bustling schoolgirls. The young man stated that this could be a very bad sign. Eldick said that, in that case, it could be assumed that something had definitely happened to him. The Crown Prince began to worry, but then he came to his senses and thought that even if this guy got into trouble, it had nothing to do with him. But nevertheless, His Highness still ran to search for the young man. Meanwhile, strangers were torturing our heroine, and she did not understand why they were beating her and for what purpose. One of them said that he had such an expression on his face, as if the guy didn't understand anything. The one who assigned them this task didn't like the fact that he was elected to the Congress. The girl thought to herself that ridiculous hostility was a very stupid reason for this. The guy continued that is why they need to break at least one of his arms, and the young man noted with the other that he has a pretty cute face. The third one picked up that he was absolutely right, and it was a pity that their prisoner was a young man. How can such a fragile boy handle a sword so skillfully? Then one of them grabbed a knife and noted that it was time to have some fun. Enough wasting time. Our heroine was not going to give up, and even tied up she managed to hit the attacker. She then reached for the knife in his hand and cut the tape that covered her mouth, after which she screamed at the top of her lungs for someone to come to her aid. The young man immediately grabbed her by the scruff of the neck and shouted at her to shut her mouth immediately. Then he pushed her to the floor and noted that he had more fortitude than he expected. After which he grabbed her by the leg and said that so that the guy wouldn't think of running away, he could start with the leg. Suddenly, His Highness Dylan appeared in the room, angrily asking what was going on here. The guys immediately started to panic that things were bad for them because this was the Crown Prince, so they needed to run as quickly as possible. Then they rushed at him with their fists, shouting that he should not block their way. But the young man decided to engage in battle with them, so he began to drive them away from himself with the help of his sword. Then the young man noticed that one of them had a knife in his hands, which posed a great danger to himself. Therefore, he did not waste time and immediately knocked it out of his hands with the help of his sword. Our heroine watched all this in surprise and did not understand what the Crown Prince was doing here at all. Had he really decided to come to her aid? Then she noticed that her shirt was torn and there was a cut on her chest. Lena Lee started to panic that she couldn't curl up into a ball, but he would still come closer and immediately understand that she was a girl, so she needed to get up immediately. Loris tried to stand up, but she couldn't do it because it was very painful. But suddenly, the young man threw his jacket over her and said that she should put it on and return it later. Our heroine thought to herself, why is he treating her so kindly? Does he really not feel disgust? The rest of the Fascists appeared in the room and asked what was going on. Dylan ordered them to call the guards immediately. When the young man freed her, our heroine asked how he knew that she was there. Kyle replied that these guys told them, after which a couple of wolves ran into the room and he told her to meet his friends. Then they jumped onto the young man's neck and he began to stroke them. A moment later, they turned into the scarf that the boy had been wearing before. Having kicked one of the attackers, the young man asked who had ordered it. The stranger replied that he could kill him, but the mercenary would still not say anything. Kyle immediately transformed into a growling wolf and asked if he really wanted to die. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince asked Lena Lee if her legs hurt, and the girl replied that they did. His Highness immediately took her arm and said that he would help her walk. Having lifted her up, the guy noted that he was quite light and should eat more, while our heroine thought to herself that they were too close to each other. Somehow it happened that the young man accidentally touched her breast. Lena Lee immediately began to panic that he would figure everything out. So she was worried for good reason, because His Highness immediately had many questions. Our heroine didn't understand what to do now. Did he really guess that she was a girl? As luck would have it, there was white noise in her head, and Loris couldn't figure out what to come up with. But the young man grabbed her by the shoulders and shouted that her bruise was really that bad. When he was supporting him, he accidentally touched his chest, and something swelled there. Kyle in the background could barely contain his laughter. Smiling, our heroine answered that yes, but she thought to herself that apparently the thought had not even occurred to him that she could be a girl. Then she muttered that he had actually been kicked in the chest. The Crown Prince said to show it to him immediately to make sure that the bones were not broken. Lenor began to think to herself that this was definitely the end, as she was at a dead end and did not know what to do. Kyle unexpectedly came to the rescue, saying that there was no need to worry so much, the guy would heal him. Our heroine even had tears in her eyes because Chrysia saved her once again. He really is a good person. The young man leaned towards her and quietly whispered that it was very good that Dylan was thick-headed. Lenor immediately thought to herself that she was taking her words back. He was just amused by this situation and nothing more. A moment later, our heroine was illuminated by a bright magical glow, after which the young man said that that was it. Now his pain should go away and the visible wounds too. Loris thought to herself that nothing really hurt anymore. The guy saved her for the second time. Krisha's healing magic was simply incredible. Meanwhile, Dylan was thinking that, let's say, the guy was really hit hard on the chest and there was a bruise there. But why then was it so soft, like a girl's breast? Then he grabbed his head and said to himself that why fantasize about a wounded man? Besides, Loris is a guy. Our heroine looked at Kyle and thanked him for healing her wounds. The young man replied that it was nothing special. It did not present him with much difficulty. Dylan was angry that despite the fact that he saved him, Liam didn't even say a word of gratitude to him. And now, on top of everything, he's also smiling at this Chrysia. What kind of strange, foggy feelings have appeared in His Highness? Immediately after this, the criminals who captured our heroine were detained, including the main culprit who ordered all this, the son of Count Dambel. He and 3 other students were expelled from the academy, and the case was closed. A few days later, the training session that had not been held the last time finally took place. Lenor competed with her friend, who was having a hard time resisting her. The young man fell to the floor exhausted and noted that Liam was still incredibly strong. The girl thanked him and replied that he was no slouch either. The guy added that he needs to train harder since he can no longer continue to lose. From somewhere off to the side, Kyle's voice said that he was doing great as always. Our heroine did not expect to see him and greeted Mr. Chrysia in confusion. The young man told her to call him simply by his name, since all these honors were not necessary. And then he suddenly moved the wolf towards her and noted that it seemed that these guys liked him too. The girl thought that she still couldn't get over the fact that his scarf was made of wolves, but she said out loud that he didn't come here for that, did he? The guy came close to her and said that since Lenor continued not to call him by his name, then he would have to reveal the fact that she was a girl. Our heroine didn't understand why he liked to tease her so much all the time. Being exposed would be much worse than calling him by his name. So I replied that I understood, Kyle. The young man immediately smiled and said that it sounded good coming from her. Suddenly, Dylan's voice was heard, telling her to fight him with swords. Our heroine wondered why she, the girl, no longer wanted to put herself at risk. Why is the Crown Prince paying such increased attention to her? Arnold, who was watching all this from the side, wondered why he was even picking on Loris. Eldick adjusted his glasses and said that it had nothing to do with him. The young man continued to think that perhaps it was because Liam had such a cute face. The young man looked at him with distrust and asked if he really liked guys. Arnold was confused at first, but then replied that this was absolutely not true. Meanwhile, our heroine fought with Dylan and thought that he had become even stronger than before, and besides, he was in better physical shape. Perhaps this is the true strength of the Crown Prince. It lacks power. She could only take it with speed, but she can't choose the right moment. Suddenly, the young man managed to knock the sword out of her hands, and she fell to the ground, breathing heavily. His Highness looked at her and wondered why this guy was so handsome. Our heroine smiled and said that Dylan is really very strong. The Crown Prince continued to think that he was just incredibly cute. Then he abruptly covered his mouth with his hand and told himself to calm down already because he was a guy. The girl looked at the young man, who was behaving very strangely, and did not understand what was happening. Lenor thought to herself that a simple competition would not compare to what awaited her in the tournament with students from other academies, so she needed to become stronger. When she tried to get up, she felt how hard she hit herself when she fell right on her butt. The Crown Prince asked if he was okay. Perhaps he needed to shake his hand. But suddenly a young man appeared who did it first, after which he noted that it was very unusual to see His Highness behaving like this. The guy explained that Liam simply got hurt during the fight with him, and naturally he is responsible for it. The young man objected that he could heal his bruise so he could handle it himself. The Crown Prince did not like this at all, and it was as if a black cat ran between them. Dylan shouted that he should get up already. Isn't it a great honor that he was specially extending his helping hand to him? Kyle said that he could heal his bruises. Our heroine looked at them and did not understand what was wrong with these two. His Highness asked sternly whether he would, of course, accept his helping hand. Kyle countered that no, Liam would accept his help with healing. The girl was in shock and did not understand who she should choose, how to act correctly in this situation, and whether she could even make the right decision. Therefore, our heroine shouted that she would rise herself so as not to choose anyone. Dylan immediately snorted and said that since he could get up himself, there were no problems. After which, Chrysia shouted that the training was over and it was time for them to go. The young man immediately waved to Lenor and said that they would see each other again. When they left, our heroine breathed a sigh of relief that it was all over. In the student dormitory of Fortis Academy, a girl collapsed on her bed and noted that the school day was finally over. She is very tired today, and this fatigue is clearly moral. But still, why did the Crown Prince save her, and then even talk to her? As today he continues to show her signs of attention, is the incident with the poison slowly changing the future? But then she seemed to come to her senses and began to get angry that this prince was the same guy who executed her family. She couldn't let her guard down. Then Lenor noticed that there was an envelope lying on her desk. The girl completely forgot that she received a letter. If the sender is indicated as Lenor Loris, then it means it came from Liam. It was very interesting to read how her little brother is doing. It said that it was very urgent. His Highness the Prince had personally sent them an invitation to the ball, so please let her return as soon as possible. Our heroine was completely horrified. What kind of ball? When was the last time she had been to such an event? She will have to go there as a girl. Lenor can't just go to the prince's ball because Dylan might guess that they switched places with Liam. What should she do now? Still, this day came. She thought many times about refusing, but this is an invitation from the royal family and from the prince himself personally, so it cannot be ignored without some good reason. And our heroine really doesn't want everyone to focus on this anyway. Only the fact of visiting is important. You can just come, chat a little, and leave. After some time, the girl got home and told everyone present about it. Numerous maids immediately began to bow and welcome their mistress back. Then they suddenly picked her up in their arms and started babbling that they had very little time, so they needed to take a bath urgently. They would wash her until she was shining. Lenor screamed that she had just returned, and that they should at least let her catch her breath a little. The girl objected that then she would have to return a few days earlier. The ball would take place this evening, and it was already approaching midday. Usually they had time from early morning, so they could take their time. While the maid was washing our heroine's head, she said that she still couldn't get over the fact that the young lady's beautiful hair had become so short. Loris replied that she pretends to be Liam to attend the academy, and that it's much more convenient with this length, and how she missed May washing her hair. The woman was indignant that she was stubborn, but even like that she really likes her. Our heroine thought about the fact that really, she can't go to the ball with such a hairstyle. What should she do? After some time, the girl was completely ready. The maids put on makeup and dressed her in a beautiful dress. They admired that Lenor looked absolutely wonderful and finally looked like herself. Loris looked at herself in the mirror and noted that this image was very different from her holding a sword in her hand. Suddenly, the brother's voice came from behind the door, saying that if the sister was already finished, then he wanted to come in. Entering the room, the guy exclaimed that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and welcome back. The girl immediately rushed to him and began asking if everything was okay with him. The guy answered that yes. After which, Liam asked if she was really going to go to the ball with such a hairstyle. Lenor seized on this clue and said that indeed, it was still impossible to go out looking like that. The young man replied that this would not do, and he knew what to do. Then the younger brother began to mutter something and a magical glow appeared in his hands, after which he touched our heroine and she suddenly had long hair, just like she had before. Loris was in complete shock and exclaimed that it was simply amazing, but she was suddenly upset that even though it was incredible, now she definitely had to go for this score. On the way, our heroine explained to him that under no circumstances should he have anything to do with Phaseus. In addition, one cannot act away from her, let him always be nearby, whether he understood everything. Liam replied that he understood everything, because this was the second time she told him this. Lenor was still worried that if something went wrong between her brother and the prince, everything could end in execution, as it had happened before, especially if His Highness finds out that they have changed places with each other. When they arrived at the place, the brother told her to just keep her head up and everything would be fine, and now it was time to go. As she got out of the carriage, the girl thought to herself that there was no point in worrying. They had already gone too far, so they should be prepared. Now, this is not just a ball, but a battlefield. Together, they will do everything as it should be. Those present immediately began to discuss the Lors twins and noted that it was the first time they had seen them at a ball together. By the way, they say that his sister is a rather arrogant girl. One of the guys objected that this simply couldn't be, since she was beautiful. The other added that they also say that she is very strong. Have they heard about this? Our heroine looked around and thought that she had never been to a ball before, and always considered this kind of event to be very boring. But everything around was so elegant and truly befitting the level of the royal family. The young man had already begun to rush towards her in order to try to talk. His friend stopped him and said that it was not necessary, since Bergman was her fiancé. Lenor felt all these stares on her and didn't understand what was happening. So she asked her younger brother if she looked strange. Maybe there was something wrong with her. The guy replied that it was all nonsense, since today she was even more beautiful than usual. Then she turned her attention to the luxurious table and noted that there were a lot of different dishes there, and they looked quite appetizing. The young man laughed and said that even in full dress she remains herself. The girl was outraged by this and exclaimed that she hoped it was a compliment. The young man replied that of course he was very glad that his little sister did not change. Then Lenor saw a secluded place where there were few people. It is not conspicuous, and in general it seems to be quiet there. If they slip away unnoticed after a while, then everything should be fine. Therefore, she told her younger brother that they needed to go in that direction. But before they could take a step, a girl materialized in front of them, who turned to Liam and said that her name was Maria Rush. Suddenly she was pushed aside by other girls, who exclaimed that who had ever allowed her to go out of turn. After which they surrounded our heroine's younger brother from all sides. Neither he nor Lenor understood what was going on at all. Loris noted to herself that it was probably because of the academy that her youngest had now become popular among the female sex. Meanwhile, the popular foursome Phaseus appeared at the gala event. Our heroine noted that she had done something bad, so she needed to clean up as soon as possible. She wanted to call her younger brother, but when she turned around, she did not see him in the place where he had been. Lenor began to panic because she didn't understand where he had gone. The girl wandered around the palace and still could not find him. Perhaps he had already returned to the hall, but Phaseus are there. Our heroine was so immersed in her thoughts that she didn't notice Kyle and crashed into him. When it dawned on her who exactly she had crashed into, the girl thought to herself that he had forgotten even being here. She immediately asked Mr. Chrysia for forgiveness and thought about why she met him now. The young man asked where her former cheerfulness had gone, after which he kissed her hand and said that it was the first time he saw her like this. She looked simply wonderful in this dress. The girl thanked him, but thought to herself that he just liked to watch her reaction. Kyle said that he doesn't want anyone else to see her like this. He even wanted to lock such beauty away somewhere. Our heroine thought that she really looked so strange today that she even needed to be locked up somewhere. After which the young man asked what she was doing in this place and why not in the hall. Lenor noted that if she told him that she was looking for Liam, he would just cheer up and follow her. This guy is a real demon in the flesh, so it's better not to say it. Therefore, she replied that it was not worthy of Mr. Chrysia's attention, and besides, she was already returning back. The young man replied that fine, he was going to do the same, so they would go together. The girl began to panic because Kyle considered it so necessary to accompany her. The young man leaned towards her and asked if he could take Mrs. Lenor Lores by the hand, and our heroine understood that if she went with him, she would definitely meet the prince. The guy decided to put pressure on her and said that in that case he would tell everyone her secret. So what would she do? The girl had no choice but to agree, because if everyone else found out about her secret, it would not end well. When they entered the hall, everyone present immediately began to discuss them, that the guys are really a couple. This, of course, is upsetting, but they are both beautiful and look good together. But in fact, Lenor is engaged to the son of the Marquis of Vergman. Lenor kept hearing these whispers and thought that everyone must be saying that she was not suitable for Kyle, the boy from Facius. At that moment, the young man was watching her and thinking about what a funny girl she really was. Then she abruptly bowed out and said that she had some urgent business to attend to, so she would have to leave him. But in reality, the main reason was that she was afraid that she would meet the prince and needed to find Liam. But suddenly the guy stopped her and asked, "What about one dance?" Our heroine asked if Mr. Cretia knew the rules of the first dance because he certainly did. In their country, there is a rule for the first dance. Only engaged couples or relatives can perform it. So what will happen if she dances with Kyle, who is not her fiancé? This young man understands everything perfectly well, but why does he need it? After which she asked that maybe he was making fun of her again, but he couldn't fool her anymore. Mr. Cretia smiled wryly and replied that it was a pity. Lenor couldn't believe that she had spent so much time searching, but still hadn't found her brother. Where had he gone? Liam couldn't have left her and returned home. The younger one would never have done that. Suddenly a young man approached her and asked if the daughter of the Marquis of Lore would mind dancing with him. Another young man appeared behind him, who pushed the first one away with his hand and declared that she had better choose him. Then the guys started to quarrel among themselves about this. The girl did not understand why everyone suddenly invited her. Perhaps the fact that Kyle was accompanying her had an effect. After which our heroine noticed that the balcony was very close to her. So she quickly asked for forgiveness and said that she remembered one very important matter, so she would go now. Lenor knew it was wrong and she couldn't do that, but it was the only way to leave the room, and she climbed over the railing. As she flew down, she saw the crown prince and noted that her second life had also come to an end. After she fell on him, she thought that it was just some kind of horror. What was he doing here at all? Because she was sure that Dylan was in the hall. Our heroine did not know what to do in such a situation and stuttered and asked him for forgiveness. The young man hissed that she had the courage to continue sitting on him. But when he looked at her closely, he muttered in shock that she was Liam Loris. Lenor was shocked. What should she do? How did he even recognize her? The guy was surprised and asked why he was looking like that. Then our heroine decided that she needed to calm down. Since now she is a girl, the guy did not understand anything. He simply confused her with her brother. So she exclaimed that no, in fact she was his older sister. After which she bowed and added that Liam is her younger twin brother and her name is Lenor. The young man looked at her and thought that there was such a feeling that it was Loris, dressed in a dress, and the face and the voice and the energy, everything, exactly like his. Then he muttered that it meant those rumors were true. At first, the girl didn't understand what rumors he was talking about, but then she remembered how Dylan had stated that her family was known for having an ill-mannered girl who had not yet gotten married. Therefore she got angry and exclaimed that he really wanted to say that she was a stubborn girl who was disgracing her family. Then Lenor realized what she had done. How dare she speak like that to the crown prince? But unexpectedly His Highness laughed loudly after her outburst. Then he said that it seemed that the rumors were true after all. First she jumped on him from the balcony, and after all that she also reproached him for it. What a careless girl. Our heroine was surprised that he didn't get angry and asked for forgiveness again, after which she noticed his hand and exclaimed that it was because of it that Dylan got hurt. The young man replied that it was okay, it would heal quickly. But Lenor had already started bandaging his hand with a handkerchief, saying that it was hard to call it first aid, but at least that was it. His Highness did not understand why, upon seeing her, his heart began to beat faster. After our heroine finished, she exclaimed that later he should properly treat the wound. Then she became afraid that she had touched the crown prince without permission and therefore asked for forgiveness. The young man could not understand why. If this was that guy's sister, Then why did he constantly remember him? Loris thought to herself that this was definitely the end. Not only did she jump on him, causing him to fall, but she also spoke to him inappropriately, plus she injured him. If Dylan still decides to execute her, then it will be a failure. So she decided that it would be better to run away before he said it, and started to say that she would then, but she didn't have time to think of anything and froze. The guy thought to himself that then she was either hungry and wanted to leave quickly or something. For the first time he meets such an unpredictable girl, she apologized with tears in her eyes, and then suddenly became furious, then immediately became worried about him, and with all this, she quickly changes her facial expression. I would like to see her again. Our heroine apologized and quickly blurted out that it was time for her to go. But the young man suddenly grabbed her hand and asked her to stop. After which His Highness asked if they could meet again. A lot happened after that, so they couldn't talk properly, but I wonder what he meant anyway. The next day, Dylan approached her and began to mumble something unintelligible about his sister. The girl began to panic, wondering if His Highness was really angry about the bruise. He doesn't want to say that his sister has been sentenced to death and Liam will never see her again. So just in case, she began to bow and say that Lena Lee asked me to convey her apologies to him for hurting him. The young man blushed and asked what she had really told him about himself. The girl cautiously answered that yes, but to herself she thought that even though it was her. When the young man thought about her answer, our heroine noted that he did not seem angry. Dylan was thinking that they really were incredibly similar, even if so. Then why did he remember Lena Lee Loris, and why was his heart beating so much? Since when next to him it beats like crazy, they are twins, so their faces are the same, but he is a guy. Then it dawned on the young man that he simply liked the face of Liam's older sister. After which he calmed down and noted that this was precisely why his heart was beating so hard. When our heroine started saying that her sister was worried about that bruise, the guy exclaimed that Lena Lee was really worried about him. The girl didn't expect that he would be so surprised that she was worried about him. But it seems that Dylan is not really angry, but he is behaving strangely. Suddenly, Arnold jumped on our heroine and exclaimed that they had not seen each other since the ball. Then she saw Kyle and Eldick, noted that they were also here and said hello. The young man said that they had not been able to talk properly at the ball, but had only exchanged pleasantries. The young man said that, by the way he was coming back, Lena Lee didn't understand who exactly. Arnold exclaimed that it looked like now that he was with them, they would definitely win the battle of swords and magic. The whole academy was already on its ears. Eldick explained that he is a young, talented knight. His swordsmanship is recognized not only by the academy, but also by the Order of the Royal Guard, so the guy entered both directions at the same time. The young man is listed as a student at the academy, but he is called a ghost student, since he almost never appears at the institution due to his participation in various expeditions. Kyle stated that he was simply a rival of Dylan. The Crown Prince objected that they were not rivals, it was just that His Highness was not that strong. He thought to himself that, besides, it seemed he was destined to become Lena Lee Lors's fiancé. Arnold exclaimed that this was the first time he had heard Dylan admit defeat so easily. He already likes this guy because he is entertaining. Noticing that our heroine was lost in thought, Kyle asked what happened. The girl replied that everything was fine, he just didn't understand who the guys were talking about. The young man immediately whispered in her ear, which was actually about her future groom. Lena Lee was taken aback by the information she heard and exclaimed in surprise that Eldick replied that Vergman should become the husband of his elder sister. Doesn't the guy know about it? Our heroine replied that she knew, but she just wasn't aware that he was coming back. Then it dawned on her that this was what the letter from her family seemed to be about. The boy said that he must be very busy, but he should read it as soon as possible. The girl, dumbfounded, replied that as soon as she returned, she would definitely read it. She thought to herself what to do when he comes back. She won't be able to understand what's going on in his head, even though the guy is her fiancé. The next day, during the carriage ride, Lena Lee still continued to think about what would happen now. If he is involved in the battle of swords and magic, then he should definitely come to this expedition camp. It is impossible to know what is going on in this young man's head and whether he will reveal her true face. Agni interrupted his thoughts and said that he thought the camp would be a lot of fun, that it was the first time he was going there with such anticipation that he couldn't even sleep yesterday. Our heroine answered that this was true, But she thought to herself that in fact, this was not just an ordinary camp. Unexpectedly, the young man added that he was very sorry, but it seemed that Bergman would not come, and he really hoped that he would be able to train with the young talent. When Lors asked again that he really wasn't coming, the guy replied that he was a very busy man, and Liam knew him, so he should know all the details. The girl immediately became cheerful and was glad in her soul that everything would work out without meeting him. Finally, she could calm down and concentrate on the camp. After some time, the guys were already looking at the schedule and the division plan. From this, our heroine learned that there was one room for 2 people. She didn't think that it would be like that. In the dormitory at the academy, after all, everyone has their own personal room. Plus, the bathroom is shared. What should she do? The girl won't be able to wash with everyone else. Agni was glad that they were lucky. They would live together and become very good neighbors. Lenor was panicking that the fact that she would be in the same room with a guy was not bad luck. Kyle suddenly came up to her and asked if she would like to sleep in the same room with him. All the rest of Phasius were shocked by what they heard and looked in their direction in surprise. The crown prince asked what kind of jokes these were. The boy asked what was wrong with that, or if he himself was planning to sleep with Liam. Loris asked why. The guy replied that because his room had a private bathroom. Lenor remembered that the Phasias have their own separate rooms. Plus, Kyle knows that she is a girl and can take a bath alone. Plus, it is much less risky than sharing a room with Agni. This is, of course, not very nice towards her friend, but it is the best way out of the current situation. The crown prince did not understand why they decided to live together. There was no need for it, and why Liam was thinking about the answer for so long. The girl thought that living in the same room with a guy is, of course, so-so, but if she had to choose between Agni and Kyle, then it would be a little easier with the latter. The young man got tired of waiting, so he took her arm and asked her if he had finally decided whether he would live in the same room with him. After some time, the young man was already showing Lenor's room and saying that although it was designed for one person, it was quite spacious. Dylan stayed there last year, so the place was completely rebuilt. Loris thought to herself after hearing this, it was no wonder that the place seemed too big and luxurious to her for some kind of camp. While the girl was muttering that the bed was so huge, even though it was only for one, the guy asked what she would do as a thank you. After all, he helps her only so that everyone else doesn't find out that she's a girl, so our heroine must thank him. Plus, she also screwed up when she refused to dance with him at the ball. Our heroine first started to get angry, but then she noted that he was again making her emotional, but she was not going to follow his lead. So she confidently asked what he wanted Lenor to do. The young man grinned and thought to himself that her reaction was still just as interesting. Then Kyle abruptly pushed her onto the bed and said that, in that case, next time, he wants to be her partner at the ball. Of course, she will have to be in the guise of a girl. Initially, it was all just to kill time, but now it seems to be different. Now he wants her to belong only to him and no one else, not even Dylan. Meanwhile, His Highness walked down the corridor and looked for Kyle's room. He thought to himself that he didn't like Liam at all, he just had a pretty face. Not even as the crown prince, he is simply obliged to be initiated into the affairs of his subjects. When the young man approached the door, it was ajar, and he decided to look inside. There, His Highness saw a picture of Kyle pressing Liam to the bed and asking if the guy wanted to take a bath together. Everything is fine, because they have already seen each other naked. The more the prince listened, the more his misunderstanding grew. His Highness was perplexed as to what they could do naked, since they were men. The young man couldn't stand it and immediately opened the doors, shouting what they were even doing here. The young man replied that they were just having a good moment, so let him not interfere. Lenor didn't understand what he was even talking about. From the outside, it probably looked extremely strange. Dylan exclaimed that this kind of relationship was really between them. They were both men. Loris tried to explain and say that he had misunderstood everything, but Kyle replied that it had nothing to do with him. Wasn't he right? Hearing this, our heroine was very surprised and wondered what he was doing at all. His Highness asked Liam if this meant that everything was mutual between him and the magician. The girl started pushing him away from her and shouting that Kyle was just joking. The young man objected that he wasn't really joking. Dylan came to the conclusion that Loris means that everything is unpleasant, and Chrysia is forcing him. Kyle is a member of Phasius, and therefore, apparently, Liam could not reject him, in which case he needs to help him out, after which he abruptly pulled her towards him. The atmosphere between the guys was tense again, and it seemed as if lightning was flashing all around. Lenor didn't understand what was going on and why they were arguing again. After some time, Eldick said that the training was over for today. They needed to make sure that their body had time to properly rest. Let them take care of that. Our heroine thought to herself that they had training, so everything remained unclear. But what should she do with the room? Noticing the crowd that stood near the notice board, Loris thought that something was wrong and she had a bad feeling. Dylan announced that he changed the room assignments, so please check your name. Coming closer, the girl saw that now she would live in the same room with His Highness. She did not understand why everything turned out this way. While Lenor was completely horrified and didn't understand what to do now, Kyle approached the prince and asked why Liam was in the same room with him. The young man replied that it was because he had decided that it was dangerous for Loris to be in his presence alone. A guy has a duty to protect his people, and that goes for Liam too. He's also his subject. The young man muttered that actually His Highness could be dangerous too. Apparently he just wanted to be in the same room with Liam. His Highness lost his temper and shouted that this was not the issue. Unlike him, he liked girls. Chrysia started to leave, and at the end he said that actually he only likes girls. The young man did not understand anything and wondered how to perceive it at all. Meanwhile, Lenor was still hysterical. Why did she end up in the same room with him? The girl didn't want to get involved with the prince. Why did everything turn out this way? It's unclear. After showing off his room, the prince said that it was definitely bigger than Kyle's room and that he could use it. Looking at the fact that there was one large bed, our heroine wondered if they would really sleep together. The crown prince added that the sleeping area was huge, so the two of them could fit in without any problems. Loris was freaking out that this was precisely the main problem. Even if she were a man, how could she sleep in the same bed with the prince? But what if she suddenly tosses and turns in her sleep and accidentally trips the young man? She will definitely be executed for that. That's why she said that it would be better to sleep on the sofa. It would be more than enough for him. The young man replied that he should calm down. Dylan would not touch him like Kyle did. Our heroine thought to herself that he was still mistaken in the situation with Chrysia, but in reality, it was not so at all. She wanted to try to explain something, but His Highness interrupted her, pointed to the door, and told her to go to the bathroom first. The girl objected that, in fact, His Highness should be first. The young man replied that there was no need to think about it. He had one more thing to do, so he would go after him. Lenor tried to object to him again, but she couldn't find the right words. The crown prince began to lose his temper and shouted that he then ordered him to go first. Loris thought to herself that despite the fact that they would be separated by one door, behind which the girl would be naked, she was located at a relatively large distance. Then, probably, if she was careful, everything would be fine. Therefore, she replied that she understood everything and, in that case, she would go first. When our heroine entered the bathroom, the young man grabbed his head and wondered what he was doing. But still, the guy is Lenor's brother, so Dylan should protect him. The crown prince told her that he wanted to meet again, but when would they be able to do so? Meanwhile, the girl relaxed in the hot bath and thought about how good she felt. But a moment later, she came to her senses and began to slap herself on the cheeks, since she must not let her guard down. Our heroine must take care that the fact that she is a girl is not revealed. Therefore, she should still sleep not on the bed, but on the sofa. It will be safer. Suddenly, she noticed the spider in front of her and screamed out loudly out of fear. The young man was stunned by this and wondered what was going on there. When he entered there to ask if everything was okay, a frightened, half-naked girl threw herself into his arms. Dylan thought that he instinctively hugged him, and in the end, just a little more and he would see him naked. The girl immediately ran out of the bathroom and on the way shouted for him to forgive her for this. Already behind the door, she was thinking that she really hoped that he hadn't opened it. His Highness stood dumbfounded and did not understand what had just happened. Our heroine looked in to ask for forgiveness once again, but then I saw on the floor that same little spider that started it all. So Lenor screamed loudly again and slammed the door behind her. Already from behind the door, the young man heard that there was a spider there, which he could not stand. His Highness immediately took him in his hands and simply threw him out the window, after which he said that he was no longer in the bathroom, so he could come in safely. Our heroine looked out and with tears in her eyes thanked him for getting rid of him. After some time, the crown prince lay down in the bath and noted to himself that it meant Liam was afraid of insects. But still, the young man was so soft and pleasant to the touch. He has such fair skin and delicate curves of his body, just like a girl. Dylan immediately began splashing water in his face in order to bring himself to his senses, and saying that he was even imagining things. Loris is a guy from head to toe. It probably shouldn't be surprising at all that Kyle liked someone like him. But then he began to convince himself again that they were both men. So how could this have happened to Krishya? If Lenali's brother looks like this, then the girl is simply incredible. His Highness began to splash water on his face again in order to drive away all these thoughts. After which he decided that it was time to go out and shouted for them to give him a towel. Then he looked around and realized that none of the servants were there today. Drying himself with a towel, the young man thought about the fact that they would be alone together. Why was he so worried? But in general, he was a guy, so what questions could there be? As soon as the guy came out of the bathroom, our heroine turned to him to talk about what had happened recently. But for some reason, the young man did not react to her and behaved rather strangely. So the girl came closer to him and asked what was wrong with him. Lenali touched his hand and noted that his body was so hot, the blood seemed to rush to his head. Suddenly, His Highness lost his balance and fell right on top of her. Lars immediately realized that her scream just now was very similar to a woman's. She then noticed his blank look and noted that he was definitely dizzy from how long he had been sitting in the hot bath. After which, she began to try to wake him up so that he would come to his senses and shout that she would now bring him some water. But suddenly the young man muttered weakly that he should not go anywhere. When the crown prince raised his head, he saw Lenali with long hair in front of him, looking at him with concern. His Majesty immediately began to mutter that he so much wanted to see her. After which he kissed her hand and added that he had constantly thought about their imminent meeting and now, finally, they were able to do it. Our heroine looked at him in surprise and thought that it seemed he was confusing her with Lenali. The crown prince continued to say that since that day he could not get her out of his mind. Loris was shocked by all this and did not understand why he was telling her such things. When the guy fell at her feet unconscious, Lenali noted that his heart was beating very fast, but he was still the man who executed her family, so she couldn't let her guard down. The next day the young man woke up and wondered if it was really morning already, and when did he fall asleep at all? Then it dawned on the young man that he had seen Lenali Lors in his own bedroom yesterday. After which he saw our heroine, who was sleeping with her legs spread apart, and he thought that he just felt bad yesterday, because how can a guy who sleeps in such an awkward position and drools be a girl? After some time, the girl thought about the fact that she ended up sleeping on the bed with the prince. If her father found out about this, he would be beside himself with anger. Besides, yesterday she thought that she had been exposed, and she was sure that the prince still remembered that moment, judging by the way he behaved in the morning and woke her up with his leg. Then she wondered if perhaps he had made an appointment with the girl in order to execute her. After which she realized that because of the heat he simply couldn't find the right words. Why didn't she think of it right away? When she came to everyone else from the training camp, the guys for some reason looked at her very strangely. Everyone around was whispering that he really likes guys. They say that he got not only to Mr. Kyle, but also to His Majesty Dylan. This is a real disgrace for their honorable academy. Our heroine didn't understand what kind of tense atmosphere was hovering around. The students were angry that they were selected based on their strength, and that boy had enough to just sleep with the management, so why shouldn't they try too? Meanwhile, Agni ran up to Lenali and exclaimed that he was very glad that he was okay. Loris asked, "What do you mean okay?" The guy answered that Liam suddenly found himself in the same room with His Highness, and since they don't have a very good relationship, the friend was worried all night. Our heroine was simply moved to tears by this, and she thanked him with all her heart. The young man noted that he very rarely smiled so sweetly, after which he exclaimed that it all didn't matter. The guy would now go drink some water and come back. Kyle noted that because Dylan is picking on Liam, he is once again becoming the subject of rumors. The young man asked what rumors and what he was talking about. The guy said that His Highness was not one of the smart ones and started to walk away. His Highness shouted what he meant, let him explain. But Eldic announced that it was time to begin training. First, let everyone break into pairs and exchange blows. Our heroine stood in sparring with her friend. Agni shouted that Liam had opened up and was about to strike, but she dodged. After which, Lenor attacked him with the hilt of her sword in the area of the back of his head. After which the young man fell to the ground, face down, and the girl noted that victory was his. The young man was freaking out, because for a split second he thought that he would finally defeat him. While giving him her hand, Loris said that to be honest he was close. His level of swordsmanship had noticeably increased. Agni was glad that Liam noticed this because lately even his body had become better. But then he added that the guy was too thin for some reason, whether he ate well. The girl answered that he had always had problems gaining muscle mass, but she thought to herself that she couldn't tell him that it was all because she was a girl. The friend exclaimed that okay, and it would be better to fight one more time. Lenor replied that it would be better for him to rest at least a little. But the young man objected that it was better to continue before he forgot all these sensations. Suddenly, the young man saw a huge stream of flame right behind our heroine and screamed cautiously. The girl only had time to sit down and cover her head with her hands. But then she saw some stranger stand up for her, after which the young man turned around, looked at her carefully, and asked if everything was okay. The girl was taken aback when she realized who it was and wondered where the guy came from. Hadn't they said that he wouldn't come? This young man was none other than Rich Bergman, who is her future fiancé. They were interrupted by Agni's cry, who asked worriedly if Liam Lors was safe. Our heroine replied that she was safe and sound, so everything was fine. Arnold happily exclaimed that Bergman had managed to come to them after all. Suddenly, the young man threw the girl over his shoulder and began to carry her somewhere. Those around him did not understand what he had even thought of and what had come over him. Lenor screamed to be let go, but the young man did not react and simply walked on. When they reached their destination, Loris noted that it was a medical center, but she didn't understand why. The guy simply said, "His leg." Our heroine immediately saw a cut on her leg, but she didn't even notice it until this moment, after which she wondered if he had really brought her here because of some scratch. As always, there was not a single emotion on the young man's face. The girl breathed a sigh of relief, since the most important thing was that he seemed not to understand who she was. But suddenly Bergman asked what Lenor was doing in this place. Our heroine began to mumble that she didn't understand what Rich meant, but the guy interrupted her and said that there was no need to pretend, since he would recognize her scent out of 1,000. As soon as he returned from the expedition, he immediately went to her, but she was not at the estate. The girl thought to herself that they became a couple only by the decision of their parents, and she always thought that he himself was not interested in her. The young man asked why it was she and not her younger brother Liam who was in this place. Our heroine didn't understand what to do since she was completely exposed, so she urgently needed to come up with something. Therefore, she couldn't think of anything better to do than say that she also wanted to become a knight. After all, is it fair that only her younger brother has such an opportunity? She, too, maybe wants to become a knight. So she persuaded her father to exchange them for at least 1 year. Suddenly, the young man told Lenor to return home immediately. The girl objected that she was not going to do this. The guy told her to pack her things, since this was not the best place for a pleasant time. Loris replied that she does not consider her presence in this place as something pleasant, since she is serious. I thought to myself that I was there to change the future and protect my family. Therefore, let the young man not dare tell her that this is all just for fun. The young man sighed heavily and said that she was still as stubborn as before. But be that as it may, let him prepare for departure. Rich himself will report everything to the academy. The girl didn't understand what to do. At this rate, they would simply send her home today. Even before the academy, the younger brother was indignant that his sister was really going to dress like a man. Is she even sure that everything will work out? The girl replied that she will and will cope with everything just fine. Liam asked what would happen if they were discovered. Besides, he was sure that she would meet Rich and he would recognize her immediately. He would be able to figure her out just by smell. Our heroine replied that they hadn't seen each other for many years, so there was nothing to worry about. The young man told her to listen carefully. If Bergman recognizes her, and she cannot do anything, then let him say the following. Then Lenor screamed what her brother had told her then. If the guy told everything at the academy, then she would not marry him. She thought to herself that although she was not sure that it would work, it was worth a try. Rich looked at her in surprise and said that he could not allow her to live surrounded by men. The girl objected that it was only for 1 year and that they had already agreed on everything with her father, after which she took the young man by the hand and simply began to beg him. The guy asked her if she could promise to marry him after that. Lenor replied that yes, so she asks to be allowed to stay at the academy until then. Unexpectedly, the young man replied that, okay, they had agreed. Loris could not believe that the words that she would not marry him turned out to be so effective. And yet she is surprised by the fact that he wants this marriage so much. She thought that he didn't care whether the guy would be with her or with someone else. But in fact, all this is unimportant now. The most important thing is that everything worked out for her and now she can stay. After some time, Rich was sparring with one of the young men and emerged victorious. Bergman noted that he thought that this young man would win. This is what is called swordsmanship. Such incredible strength for his age is too much. The girl thought to herself that it was very good that she managed to persuade him, but she was surprised that the young man was so popular. It seemed that it was not for nothing that he was called a young genius. After seeing everything with her own eyes, it is no wonder why Agni praises him so much. Since they signed the contract, Rich has been busy with active activities on the front lines, and after the false accusation, their engagement was broken off. As a result, they became distant, and therefore, she does not really know anything about him. However, in childhood, the young man was much weaker than her. Having won once again, the girl solemnly declared that victory was hers again. This upset the boy very much, so he couldn't hold back and burst into tears. Lenor exclaimed, "Why is he crying again? Bergman is such a crybaby." Having calmed down a little, the baby asked if she only liked strong people. The girl answered that yes, a man who is strong physically and mentally is her dream. Rich exclaimed that in that case, he would never cry again and would train hard to become stronger than her. At that time, Bergman was so cute, but before she knew it, the guy had grown up and gained strength. But in her head, the young man remained the same crybaby he was back then, even though he is a completely different person now. Now our heroine is not his rival and will not be able to defeat him. After some time, His Highness said that it was time for them to go to the room. Bergman asked to wait a minute and asked why the Crown Prince needed Liam. Dylan replied that it was probably because they lived together. Rich asked why he was sharing a room with His Highness, since Liam was only the son of a marquis, a status that did not qualify him for living together. The guy replied that he thought that there was no point in attaching importance to such things here, and that it had nothing to do with him at all. The young man replied that he did. Liam was his bride's younger brother, so he would look after him. Our heroine watched them and didn't understand why they were both so serious. Just like in that situation with Kyle, it seems they don't get along very well with each other. When Bergman led her into the room, he informed her that he was sleeping in another place and that she could stay there alone. Lenor smiled at him, thanked him for everything, and wished him good night, while she was thinking to herself that she wondered if he cared about her just because she was a girl or what. The guy didn't understand how Loris could end up in such a place and how much he liked her. Since their last meeting, she had only become more charming. She was very beautiful with long hair, but short hair suits her too. Lenor is really beautiful. Does she really live in the academy among men? The girl is charming even in this guise. He is worried that she attracts the attention of different guys. But the young man became stronger in order to protect her, so he will never give her up to anyone. Our heroine's tense stay at the camp came to an end, and they returned to Fortis Academy again. Agni noted that the practice was already over, and he was even a little sad, as he had already begun to miss the camp. Then she turned her attention to Rich and remembered that he also studies in this place. He appears and disappears, so no one knows exactly when the guy is in Fortis. The young man asked if he really worked as a security guard for someone else. Suddenly the blonde pointed her finger at the girl and screamed that she really wanted to die if she dared to wear a ribbon in her hair the same color as hers. The girl immediately began to ask for forgiveness from Mrs. Cicely, but she continued to yell that she was annoying her and that she should get out of her sight, and quickly. The student answered in tears that it was fine, and once again asked forgiveness for her ignorance. The girl snorted and exclaimed that she seemed to have no idea where she was. Watching this scene, Agni asked if Liam knew who she was. Our heroine replied that she was seeing her for the first time. In fact, she had the feeling that she had already heard about this Cicely somewhere, but she couldn't remember. Suddenly, someone from the crowd shouted that the Phasias had appeared and they were, as always, incredible. The girl immediately changed her expression to a friendly one and exclaimed that she so wanted to see Mr. Dillon. His Highness looked at her menacingly and asked what she was doing at the academy. The girl replied that starting tomorrow she would be temporarily studying at Fortis. Then she began to stretch her hand towards the young man and ask if he would show her everything there, but the guy pulled away from her, after which, completely ignoring her, he told Phaseus that they needed to move on. Arnold laughed and said that Dillon was as straight as ever, and Miss Cicely was still as playful as ever. Eldick said that only the future groom, that is, His Highness, could stop her thoughtless actions. The Crown Prince replied that he had not become engaged to her because he was in love, so if there was a need, they could take countermeasures themselves. Our heroine was stunned by this news and simply looked on in silence. Then Lenor remembered that this girl, Cicely Nora Crazis, is Dillon's fiancée, an arrogant girl who tramples people she doesn't like to smithereens. If you cross her path, access to social events will be closed. That is where she got her nickname, the Poisonous Flower. Lores had only one thought on this matter. If you run into her, then trouble is sure to follow, so it's better to just not get close. The next day, our heroine saw Dillon with a girl who asked him if he wanted to have lunch with her today. Lenor thought about keeping her distance, so she tried to walk past them and remain unnoticed. Upon seeing her, the young man immediately pulled his hand away from Cicely and exclaimed that everything was absolutely not as he thought. Let him not misunderstand, of course she is his bride, but let him just listen to him. After which, the young man became even more nervous and exclaimed that there was no need to imagine unnecessary things. The young man grabbed his head and thought about why it looked like he was making excuses to him, but Crazis had said that they needed to go, otherwise they would be late for class. When the girl again tried to take his arm, His Highness pulled her away sharply. The girl immediately lost her balance and began to fall down the stairs. Our heroine, who wanted to help her, flew head over heels down with her. While Lenor was thinking that it was good that it wasn't that high, the Crown Prince was flying towards her, shouting if he was okay. When Lors replied that everything was fine, Dillon exclaimed that there was no need to scare him like that anymore. Cicely immediately wondered why he was worried about him first, and not about her. Our heroine replied that nothing hurt anywhere, so everything was really fine. The guy replied that if that was true, then everything was fine. After some time, the girl was freaking out. Why is everything like this? After all, she is his fiancée. Crazies should be his priority. Mr. Dillon never smiled at her like that. Who the hell is this guy? He just put on a cute face and His Highness melted right away. She will never forgive him. She doesn't like Liam? Suddenly a voice came from behind her and asked if she wanted to get rid of him. A man offers her a deal. She just needs to follow his instructions. Cicely asked if he could really help her deal with that guy. When the stranger answered that he did, the girl immediately asked to be brought up to date. After some time, our heroine was going about her business and heard someone calling her by name. It turned out to be Cicely, asked if he was going to training now. If the guy didn't mind, then she would like to walk a little with him. Lenor replied that it was possible, but she thought to herself that she couldn't believe that someone who wasn't interested in anyone except the prince had suddenly paid attention to her. Moreover, recently there has been too much of this attention. What does she want from her? On the way, the girl apologized and said that in fact there was something she wanted to tell him, but not here, but in another place. When they came to a secluded place, our heroine asked what she wanted to talk to him about. After hesitating a bit, the girl said that she wanted to say that she had fallen in love with Lors. Lenor was very surprised because how is this even possible? She exclaimed out loud that in fact she was the bride of His Highness Crown Prince Dillon. Crazis muttered that it was true. The master really loved her with all his heart, and also constantly reminded her of his love, but she could not reciprocate his feelings. The girl thought to herself what she was even talking about, because he behaves colder than an iceberg with her, so how can he constantly remind her of his love? Cicely continued that the one she loves is only Mr. Lores, after which she suddenly pulled her towards herself, tore her dress on her chest, and began to scream loudly. Our heroine didn't understand what was going on, and Crazis kept screaming for her to be saved and for someone to come to the rescue. Guards immediately burst into the room and asked what was going on. Seeing the girl in torn clothes and all in tears, the men shouted that how dare he do such a thing to the mistress, let him immediately leave her. The girl started trying to explain everything and tell them to wait a minute, since everything was not as it looked from the outside. But the guard still rushed to attack her, and she had to fight him off. Lenor didn't understand what was going on and why Mrs. Cicely did this. The girl screamed for them to immediately seize this young man. Our heroine fought with men and did not understand why she decided to set her up. At this rate, she would be sent to jail because of a false unification. Something must be done to buy time. Just when she started to think that things were bad and she couldn't cope, Bergman came to the rescue. The young man immediately exclaimed that they would have to deal with him first. Not even a minute had passed before the guy managed to neutralize the attacking guards. His Highness immediately appeared in the room and asked what was going on. From behind the crown prince, all the rest of Phaeacius were looking out. Cicely, all in tears, immediately threw herself on his chest and exclaimed that she was so frightened because Mr. Loris had suddenly attacked her. She is, after all, his fiancé, and the guy suddenly started to get handsy. Crazes didn't give him any permission. Our heroine understood that things were bad. Even if she said that this was not so, most likely they would not believe her. What awaits her for attacking the prince's bride? In the worst case, her family will also be held accountable. Lenor has tried so hard all this time, but it seems the execution is still unavoidable. The girl added that she had also heard that he was pestering other students at the academy and seducing them. A dirty sodomite. How could such a person even be in Fortis under the leadership of Prince Delana himself? This is also a blow to his authority. This guy needs to be expelled from the academy immediately. But suddenly the crown prince said that Loris was his friend, so every word spoken against him he would perceive against himself. Lenor was shocked that his Highness believed her and not Mrs. Cicely. The young man turned to his fiancée and said that it seemed she had said something else about his authority. Did she really think that it could be undermined by something like this? Even though, unfortunately, she is his fiancée, he will not allow himself to be insulted. The girl began to try to justify herself and explain that she did not intend to insult him. But the young man interrupted her and said that by the power given to him as the crown prince of Sicily, Nora Crasus, he would carry out her sentence. The girl screamed, "What kind of sentence? Everything is not at all as he thought. She was forced. She didn't want any of this." But her Highness hissed menacingly, saying that she should repeat what she had just said. The girl did not try to object to him and simply fell to her knees right in front of his Highness. When the guy started asking Loris how he felt, Lenor immediately imagined that he would now talk about the execution. Therefore, she loudly screamed the word "no" and abruptly pushed his hand away from her. Then she began to cry, because she was very scared that if she again had to see her family executed before her eyes, the girl simply would not be able to bear it. Our heroine covered her ears with her hands and began to shout loudly that enough was enough. There was no need to kill them. Bergman immediately told Liam to watch his words, after which he asked for forgiveness from his Highness and added that he would have a talk with him. Then he grabbed Lenor by the hand and began to quickly lead her out of the room. The crown prince didn't understand what had just happened because he just wanted to help. Why did it all turn out this way? Was it really his fault again? Therefore, the young man began to get angry that he had gone too far, after which he shouted that the execution was cancelled and that they should take Cicely to prison. Arnold wanted to tell him something and reached out his hand to touch his shoulder. But his Highness was completely furious and shouted that he should not touch him. The young man exclaimed that he was so angry and should cool down at least a little. Kyle thought to himself that Dylan's bad habit had come out again. He suddenly lost track of the whole situation and rushed forward at full speed, causing pain not only to himself, but also to those close to him. It seems the young man had a similar expression on his face the very day his mother died. Although he became calmer after meeting Lenor, the guy really hopes that the old crown prince will not interfere with his present. While the girl was sitting in the dungeon, she heard the voice of the same stranger who said that she looked very pitiful. She immediately exclaimed how he got there. The man replied that with the help of magic, it was all as easy as pie. Cicely screamed that if this was so, then let him immediately get her out of there, because what happened to her was all because of him. He was to blame for everything. The young man replied that she had made her choice herself, then she almost told him about it. Therefore, the bad girl deserves to be punished, after which he stretched out his hand forward and a magical formation appeared there. The girl grabbed her throat and asked what he had just done. The stranger replied that he had put a curse on her. If she tried to tell them the truth, it would activate and kill her immediately. After which he turned around and started to leave, saying that she alone was to blame for everything. After some time, Rich came to Lenor and asked for forgiveness for being so sudden, but he was soon leaving on an expedition with the nightly order, so he came to see her before leaving. The girl apologized for her recent behavior and said that she didn't know what came over her, but now everything was fine. The guy asked that she would probably go home for the summer holidays, and when he returned from the expedition, he would definitely visit her. Let the girl not forget that no matter what happens, he will always be on her side. As she watched him go, Lors wondered if he really cared about her. It was very unexpected, but even he had his sweet sides. But our heroine was very worried about the question of why he suddenly decided to visit her parents' house. Mrs. Cicely was released from prison, but she is said to have been cursed at a high level that prevents her from telling the truth about what happened. Therefore, Lenor still does not know exactly why she did this to her. She only said that she was forced to. The alleged perpetrator was never found. Could it be the same person who added poison to the tea party? In addition, having lost control, she behaved terribly towards His Highness Dylan and took out her anger on him. Since then, they have never seen each other. But it was the prince who executed her family. He even wanted to behead his own bride. Perhaps it would be better for her not to get involved with him. It would be the right decision. A few days later, our heroine collected all her things and noted that she only had to remember to take them home with her tomorrow. A lot has happened in the last couple of months. She fell right on the prince from the balcony, ran out to him naked, and much more. After which our heroine realized that all her memories were only about Dylan. Suddenly she heard a bird knocking on her window, so she went to open it. When the dove threw the letter into her hands, the girl noted that it was Liam's magic. I wonder what happened. Does she really need to return earlier than planned? Her father is probably crying there. The letter said that a misfortune had happened. Why did His Highness come to visit her at all? And he also said that he would not leave until he met her. Her brother would try to get rid of him somehow, but she should come anyway as soon as possible. Our heroine was very surprised that the crown prince forgot himself in their house. She really hopes that he did not come to execute her for pushing him away. In general, it's very strange that the guy came to meet her, or rather Lenor. Even though she was told to come back quickly, it would still take half a day or more to get home. What should I do in this situation? She could return in an instant with the help of movement magic, but she doesn't have any magic at all. Who can use it? It suddenly dawned on her that there was a person in the academy who had access to high-level magic. Meanwhile, Kyle sat in his room in the special dormitory allocated for the fascias. A servant looked in on the young man and said that guests had come to see him. The young man was surprised that there were other guests. He was planning to go home today, so he hadn't arranged a meeting with anyone. He didn't want to be disturbed. Let him say that there was no one in the bedroom. The man muttered that the thing was that this man was his younger comrade. When the guy heard that it was Liam Lors, he started to get up from his chair and said that it was going to be like that right away. After which he thanked him for reporting this and said that he would talk to him himself. When the young man saw her, he asked what happened. Because he did not expect to see her, the girl immediately rushed to him and began to ask for forgiveness for the suddenness. After which she exclaimed that she had one request for him and our heroine's life depended on it. Kyle pinned her against the wall and said that since it was a matter of life and death, the price should be high enough. Until recently, the young man was worried about her condition, but as he sees, she is much better now. After which the young man asked what they would do with her. Lenor noted that there definitely must be some kind of fee, since the guy is one of the most influential people in the academy. Our heroine exclaimed that it was good. She would do everything in her power, just let him help. The guy looked at her carefully and said that he was scared by her naivety. How can one agree to literally anything with such ease? She should think more rationally. Then, after a pause, he added that it was clear from her face that she had no idea what the young man was talking about, after which he leaned over to kiss her and said that this is exactly the meaning he puts into the concept of a high price. Lenor didn't expect this, so she pushed him away sharply and ran to the side. Chrysia smiled and asked if she now understood what the young man wanted at all. He still kept her secret, if she thought it was time to pay the bills, for example, with a kiss. The girl thought to herself that he had indeed helped her out more than once, but a kiss was too much. Then the guy smiled and asked what kind of request she was asking, whether it was worth her kiss, because no matter how you look at it, he was the only one she always asked for help. Our heroine came up with a compromise solution, and she exclaimed that she would definitely dance with him at the next ball. Kyle noted that he was completely hooked, as he saw that her energy had already returned, and added that this time he would give in to her. After which he asked what she wanted him to do. Lena Lee replied that he should move her home immediately. The guy muttered that it was strange. She said that it was a matter of life and death, but it turned out to be a mere trifle. Lars almost blurted out that the prince was at her house, but she thought in time that it would be better for him not to know about his arrival. There was no need to talk about it at all, because every time fate brings these two together, something is bound to happen. So she exclaimed that it was nothing special, she just urgently needed to go home. The guy replied that it was okay. After some time, she was already standing in the center of the magic circle, and Kyle told her that she did not need to leave it. While Krisha was whispering the spell, Lena Lee thought that the guy was right. All she does is ask him for help and doesn't give anything in return. She completely ignores him. Is the girl really that terrible? After all, if the young man gets bored, he can tell her secret. Remembering what the young man had said, she abruptly pulled him by his tie and kissed him on the cheek, after which she exclaimed that now they should be even and began to teleport. Already at home, the girl began to think that maybe she shouldn't have done this, because it's not allowed before the wedding. Our heroine has never kissed anyone, not even on the cheek. How should she behave now during her next meeting with Kyle? Why did I start to push away all these thoughts and convince myself that it was just gratitude? Therefore, this kiss has no meaning, so there is no need to take it to heart. Suddenly, Liam opened the door to the room and stated that his sister had indeed returned. Lena Lee was frightened and exclaimed how he even figured it out. Heading towards her, the young man said that she felt powerful magic nearby, but now is not about that at all. He immediately began to grow her hair with the help of magic, and at the same time shouted at her to change her clothes as soon as possible, since the situation was getting worse and worse. They all lied, saying that she was still getting ready, and thank God His Highness agreed to wait. After which, the younger one literally threw her into the hands of the maids and declared that now the rest was up to them. The girls immediately surrounded her from all sides and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Just think, the Crown Prince himself had come to her. They would now do everything in the best possible way. When the preparations were finished, her mother ran up to her and asked what all this meant. She could not believe that Dylan himself came especially to meet her when they had not yet become so close. The father began to shout, asking if she had done something wrong at the academy. She could not have behaved rudely towards His Highness. Lena Lee replied that she would never do that, but she thought to herself that she couldn't say for sure. Mom pushed the man aside and noted that the Crown Prince was simply a magnificent young man. The guy is handsome and gives the same impression that people talk about. If he became her partner, she would be very happy for them. Dad shouted that she was even saying such a thing. There was no way they could cancel the engagement with Vergman. Besides, His Highness probably already has a fiancé, but his mother again pushed him aside and asked her daughter who she herself preferred, Rich or Dylan. Our heroine noted to herself that her mother has not changed at all and is still the same as before. These topics of conversation are her favorites. Then she replied that their relationship with His Highness was not what they thought, and to herself she noted that why then did he come to the meeting not with Liam, but with her? Perhaps the Crown Prince decided to find out something after he got a bad bruise on his hand because of her at the ball. The brother exclaimed that they hadn't talked too much. Dylan was actually still waiting. They had taken him to the gazebo in the garden, so his sister should run there quickly. On the way, the girl thought about what he could possibly have in mind if he was not going to leave until he met her in person, since it had come to this, and then she had no other choice but to see him. But the young man still remains the one who executed her family. In any case, it is necessary to forget about your feelings and emotions. Lena Lee is the daughter of a marquis, so she must concentrate her mind properly. Meanwhile, the guy couldn't get the question out of his head. Why did Liam start crying? Because the Crown Prince only wanted to protect him. What went wrong? At the moment, he came here in a fit of emotion, and without any warning. Perhaps Lena Lee knows the real reason for his tears. But this is not at all because His Highness wanted to meet the young man's daughter. Meanwhile, a girl had already approached him, greeted Dylan, thanked him for waiting, and asked how she could help him. The young man was at first speechless, but then he muttered that she was simply beautiful, and so beautiful, like a goddess. Our heroine asked him not to flirt with her, otherwise she might misunderstand him. His Highness replied that he had never said anything like this to anyone before. When they sat down at the table, the girl wondered what she was thinking about, since he said that she looked like a goddess. Lenor is sure that this is not the first time he has said something like this, so he cannot be trusted. The young man decided to break the heavy silence and said that the weather outside was wonderful today. Our heroine answered that it was indeed. After which he asked what she had been doing today. Loris replied that she had been doing personal business. Noticing that the atmosphere was tense, the guy asked if she was angry with him for arriving without warning. When the girl replied that she did not, the crown prince asked if there was something else that made her angry. Our heroine replied that no, and reminded him that they were both engaged, so she didn't see anything good in these meetings. But she thought to herself that if he knew what really made her angry, she just didn't want to get involved with the person who treated her family so terribly. Suddenly, the young man became angry and shouted that he had no idea that they had twins on their minds, which is why they were both constantly angry. Lenor looked at him menacingly and asked if he himself had any idea, if he really didn't understand what she was talking about, if the guy thought that Loris didn't know how he had mocked Liam in front of everyone. The young man's expression immediately changed, and he quietly replied that it was already in the past. Perhaps when he first met him, he didn't like her brother because Dylan saw him as a rival. His Highness cannot deny this, but lately everything has been different. The girl interrupted him and asked if this was really all. Did he understand how much Liam suffered? Did the guy even realize it? She thought to herself that her youngest was constantly under this oppression so that the family would not worry about him. The young man kept it a secret. But when everything came to light, it was already too late, and all only because he allegedly did not like Liam. The crown prince replied that he was very sorry. It was all because of his own weakness. He understood that it was too late to apologize now. Initially, it was just a simple dislike. His hair color, eye color was like his mother's. The guy thought he had already forgotten about it. The horrible memory that Dylan wanted to get rid of so badly came back to him when he met Liam, so he literally went crazy. Our heroine noticed that he looked very downcast and that the guy was thinking about something, but she didn't understand what was happening. As they walked through the garden, Lenor thought that she had never expected the crown prince to suddenly ask for forgiveness. But why did the young man look so dejected? It wasn't because of his own actions. Suddenly, the girl tripped and began to fly down because she could not stay on her feet. The young man immediately picked her up, told her to walk carefully, and asked if she was hurt. Loris replied that everything was fine, after which it dawned on her that she was too close to His Highness, so she pushed him away and thanked him. But the guy held her tightly to himself, and the girl did not understand what he was doing and said that everything was fine with her so she could be let go. The young man asked to be allowed to stand with her like this, at least a little longer. Loris screamed that it was impossible. If someone noticed, they would think that there was something between them. But His Highness replied that he didn't care, let others think what they wanted, after which he added that he liked her very much. And from the very day the young man saw her for the first time, our heroine thought, since what first day, really, when she fell on him from the balcony? Lenor replied that she had enough of such jokes. She was sure that it was a one-time delusion, but the guy objected that the girl was wrong. Loris exclaimed that she had a fiancé, and besides, the crown prince also had a fiancé. The young man replied that from that very day he thought only of her. No matter what he did, there was only her in his head. The girl immediately remembered Cicely's words that, in fact, Mr. Dylan loves her, his bride, with all his heart, and he always reminds her of his love. Therefore, I decided that the young man most likely says such words only when he himself needs it. The guy cannot be trusted. Then she said that, apparently for him, His Highness, meeting a person like her was something new. The crown prince shouted that this was not the case at all. He liked her, and he was sincere with her. He had never thought about someone so often that just thinking about him made his heart beat like crazy. Our heroine wondered if he was telling the truth, but then why on that day was he going to execute Madame Cécile, who was his beloved bride, and why was it necessary to execute her family? Therefore, she replied that sooner or later his feelings would cool, and he would want to execute her just as Crasus had intended. The young man was shocked by what she said and could not even get a word out. Our heroine began to run away and did not understand what to do now because she did not want to say this, but he is a cruel prince, one who can execute even his bride, whom he once loved. The young man is simply terrible, but the most terrible of all here is most likely she. Despite her words, somewhere deep in her soul, the girl thinks that he will not kill her. Without realizing it, she began to trust him, even though he was so hateful to her. Lenor grabbed her head and began to ask herself to come to her senses, because this man was responsible for the execution of her family. That alone was enough to ensure that he could not be trusted. Suddenly, a young man appeared, grabbed her hand and asked her to wait, so that she would not run away from him. But our heroine tried to break free and screamed for him to let her go, please. His Highness shouted that no, let him hear him out, he would not execute her under any circumstances. Lenor exclaimed that how could he claim that his feelings for her would ever cool down? The young man replied that even if that were so, he should not be repelled by the feelings that he already had. Our heroine thought to herself, what next? What about the execution of her family? This fact is obvious, no matter how sincere it is, but she should not trust it. But then she noticed his gaze and wondered why Dylan was looking at her like that, as if he now and the prince from the past were completely different people. The young man said that he was not asking her to reciprocate his feelings, he only wanted to express his feelings to her. The crown prince had never been loved by anyone, so he thought that he simply did not know such a feeling as love. Therefore, now the young man wants to hold on to this feeling as long as possible. Meanwhile, Liam, who was eavesdropping on all this, began to really panic, because since when has his sister been in such a relationship with Dylan? Therefore, I decided to help the older one just in case, and started shouting her name and asking where she was. The girl immediately asked His Highness to leave for today, after which she said goodbye and went to meet her younger brother. When he saw Liam, the crown prince wondered if he had always been so tall. He had seemed more petite and fragile to him before, plus his voice was a little lower. After some time, the young man said that he was very surprised whether His Highness really liked her so much, when they had even managed to become so close. The brother thought that the prince was a terrible person, but who would have thought that he had so many feelings? The guy even thought for a second that he was in some kind of romance. The guy doesn't know if he should say this, but they just look great together. Lenor replied that there was no need to talk about it for fun. How could they possibly be compatible with the crown prince? There was no need to joke like that. The young man asked why she was rejecting him so vehemently. Liam had been asking herself this question for a long time. Plus, she even decided to dress up as a man in order to go to the academy. What is his sister hiding from him? A girl can share anything with him because he is her younger brother. Our heroine thought to herself that he was constantly suffering, kept all the pain inside himself. Could she allow him to share those terrible memories with her? Should she tell him that in the past they were all executed, and would he even believe it? The young man added that he would be on her side no matter what. Loris burst into tears, thanked him, and asked if he would listen to her. Lenor told them everything, that she was reborn, that all of their family members were killed by the prince, and that now she was trying her best to change the future. Liam listened to her story in all seriousness. Suddenly, the young man asked her if she was sure that this was the work of the prince himself. Loris asked what he meant. The guy answered that the prince seemed to him to be a very timid person and unable to restrain his feelings. He does not think that after her reincarnation his character has changed. He couldn't even comprehend how His Highness, who didn't seem like a two-faced person, could have planned all this on his own. The girl asked if he wanted to say that he was being guided by someone from outside, and that this person was to blame for the death of their family. Liam responded that firstly, his false accusations, and secondly, her broken engagement to Bergman. Thirdly, the fact that at the time of their execution he was on an expedition. Somehow the circumstances turned out too well. If the young man had not left, he would have definitely tried to prevent this. Our heroine thought that indeed that time she was not able to think it all over calmly. The younger brother asked her how she could come up with such a train of thought. The Lors and Bergman families are families of descendants of knights, each with its own distinguished history. Her engagement to Rich would have strengthened their alliance, so it can be assumed that this, in turn, would have upset the balance of power among the aristocrats to no small degree. However, His Highness Dylan, as a member of the imperial family, would not care at all about such a marriage, whether there was anyone else besides the prince who would benefit from getting rid of their family. The girl wondered if this was even possible, because she had never even thought about it and always believed that only the crown prince was to blame for everything, which is why she always hated him. The younger brother added that, however, it was only his guess. Our heroine felt terrible for treating him like that. The young man said that from now on they would act together. He was sorry that before this she had to cope with everything alone, after which he thanked her for trying so hard. Lenor burst into tears and thought about how she now has Liam. She is very happy about it. A few days later, Loris and Vergman were riding somewhere in a carriage. The young man couldn't get the thought out of his head that his bride was as beautiful as always. She looks simply stunning in every dress, but her languid appearance is no less wonderful. Other men are unworthy of seeing such beauty. He would have refused if it weren't for the invitation to the ball from the Crissia family, and now it's too late to go back. The girl looked at him and did not understand what was happening. It seemed that Rich was not in the mood today. He was frowning more than usual. At the sight of Vergman and Lenor, all those present were surprised that the gentleman came with a couple. They would never have thought that they would suddenly see him at the ball. From afar, our heroine saw that same four from Facius. Lenor didn't understand how to look His Highness in the eyes after everything that had happened. When she saw Kyle, Loris remembered how she told him that she would definitely dance with him at the next ball. The girl understood that she had made him a promise, but now it was completely impossible. What to do now? Rich was already in a bad mood, plus the situation with the prince was not easy. She immediately had a bad feeling about today's ball. Lenor looked around and thought that this was, of course, not surprising, but still the Duke's house was incredibly luxurious. This is her first time at a ball with Vergman, but despite all this, the guy is clearly not in the mood today. Rich usually avoids such events from which one can conclude that he does not like them, but today he agreed only because she went. Suddenly, Kyle materialized next to her and greeted Mrs. Lenor Loris. Stuttering, our heroine greeted Mr. Crissia in response and thanked him for the invitation. Vergman immediately blocked her path and angrily thanked Kyle for the invitation. The young man replied that it was unexpected, that he too had decided to come, although he would have been satisfied with only her presence. The guy hissed that Lenor was his fiancée, and there was no work in the knightly order yet, so he had free time. The young man retorted that the fact remains that he doesn't really attend balls, does he? Kyle thought he was keeping sweet Lenor locked up under the guise of work. After these words, Rich immediately grabbed our heroine and said that they needed to go. Already on the balcony, the guy thought that, as he thought, she was quite popular among men. You could tell from the looks on those guys' faces. Was there really always so much attention paid to her at every event? Plus this Crissia, the young man thought that girls were not interesting to him, but it is obvious that the guy had his eye on his bride. His thoughts were interrupted by the girl's voice, who said that they had just arrived, and he already wanted to leave. The guy replied that they would be in this place until the end of the evening, but he thought to himself that the balcony was safe. No one would stare at his beautiful Lenor. When our heroine asked why, the guy answered that he didn't want anyone to look at her. Lenor thought to herself that she really looked so bad today that he was ashamed to be around her. Then she got angry and shouted that she had enough. Since he was so uncomfortable because of her, she would go dance with Mr. Crissia. The young man asked in surprise why she was mentioning his name again. Loris replied that he didn't like her company. The young man grabbed her hand and exclaimed that this was not so. If she was not his partner, then there was no point in dancing. Then he added that he had expressed himself a little incorrectly. That is, he did not want others to enjoy her beauty. The girl was surprised that this was really the same Rich she knew. It seemed like he wasn't joking. Our heroine replied that she had misunderstood everything and asked for forgiveness for getting angry. But they have come such a long way to attend the ball, so they need to dance. While the guys were dancing, everyone present was discussing what a charming couple they were. They couldn't help but make everyone smile. Lenor said she thought he was only good at swordplay, but it turns out the guy can dance well too. The young man replied that she too, but she had developed calluses from the sword, so she should take care of her hands. The girl was indignant that he spoke like her father. She's been training for a long time, so there's nothing she can do about it. Bergman thought that she was simply incredible at dancing, but how annoying it was that the men around her admired her. It was still calmer on the balcony, but retreating was no longer an option. His Highness watched them from the side and thought that if only he would dance with her, although this was only his fantasy. The girls present discussed that the Crown Prince was keeping an eye on her, but they didn't think so. One of them said that she also thought about it, and also that incident that happened on vacation, Dylan came to her for a personal meeting. Is it really true? But the lady has rich. Even now it is clear that they are an ideal couple. Kyle, who heard all this, began to replay in his head that His Highness was at the Lore's house during the holidays. Then the young man remembered how the girl had persuaded him to fulfill the request on which her life depended, and it all began to dawn on him. Meanwhile, our heroine was thinking that this was her first dance at the ball, and she was very grateful to Bergman that it was a success. Suddenly, Cretia's voice was heard from behind, asking if Madame Lorez could also grace him with her dance. Lenor thought to herself that she had made him a promise that she would dance with him, but right now she couldn't do it under any circumstances. Kyle took our heroine by the hand and said that it was very noisy here. Why don't they go somewhere else for privacy? Then a magical glow appeared, after which they suddenly disappeared. The young man was furious and did not understand what Cretia had planned. When they found themselves in the garden, the girl asked why it happened so suddenly. The guy replied that it was simply time for someone to pay their bills. Lenor replied that she had not gone back on her promise, but there was no talk of him taking her away by force. The guy replied that it looked like she didn't want to dance with him from the beginning. Lors thought to herself that Kyle invited her right in front of Richa, who is her fiancé. Doesn't he understand how it looks from the outside? Looking around, the girl saw beautiful flowers and noted that this garden was simply wonderful. The young man replied that this was his only favorite place in this house, and that it was here that he would like to dance with her. No one can disturb them there. There is no one else in the garden except them. Our heroine noted to herself that in such a wonderful place, and also with Kyle, it was just like with a prince from a fairy tale. But why doesn't the guy even look at her? The atmosphere around him is different from usual. Suddenly, the young man abruptly led her to the side, and she was frightened by the surprise. This outraged her, so she exclaimed that the young man should be more careful. Then she looked at him and asked if she was imagining things or if he was angry because today he was not like usual. Cretia replied that he wasn't exactly angry but simply wondered if she was hiding something from him. Lenor asked what he was talking about, but she thought to herself that she had really deceived him about something. The young man responded by asking whether she would continue to pretend that nothing had happened. The young man, for example, heard that Dylan came to her estate during the holidays. The girl asked in surprise how he knew this at all. The guy asked if she liked using him like that. Loris replied that it wasn't so, she had no bad intentions. Kyle asked if she remembered what he told her back then, that if he got tired of it all, he would tell her everything. Now the situation is clearly not in the young man's favor. The girl was afraid that he really wanted to reveal her secret. She really didn't tell Cretia that the prince had come to see her. But she didn't understand why the young man was so angry, so she asked him. The guy asked if she really didn't understand who he was to her at all, a convenient puppet or what. Our heroine did not expect such an answer and immediately began to deny everything. Kyle asked if Lenor knows how devious she is. She understands his feelings but still continues in the same spirit. Her insensitivity is very annoying. At first it was interesting to watch, but now it is not. Also, she treats Dylan completely differently. Is it because he is the crown prince or is it because he is someone special to her? The girl asked what he was getting at when he spoke of His Highness, and the boy asked why she cared so much about him, despite the fact that he was the one who fulfilled all her requests. Our heroine realized how it all looked in Kyle's eyes, but she just didn't want to be executed, so what should she say now so that the guy would believe her? Then the young man asked if perhaps she liked the crown prince at all. Lenor immediately began to remember how Dylan told her that he couldn't get her out of his head, that she was beautiful and fine, like a goddess, that he never told anyone this but he really likes her. But she exclaimed out loud that everything was completely wrong and she didn't like the guy. She thought to herself again that she simply did not want him to execute her, so Cretia's judgment was incorrect. Suddenly the young man turned to Dylan and told him to go out, because eavesdropping was not good. A moment later, His Highness appeared, looking upset. Our heroine was in shock and did not understand how he ended up in this place. The Crown Prince replied that he had no intention of eavesdropping but was simply passing by. I thought to myself that it turns out that Kyle and Lenor Loris know each other and seem to be quite close since they are now together in such a place. The young man asked if he had heard what the girl had recently said. The young man looked at him silently and did not answer. Crisia muttered what kind of reaction was this, because he expected something a little different. After which he added, hugging our heroine, that in that case we could tell Dylan something even more interesting, namely the secret of Lenor Loris. His Highness asked in surprise what other secret there was. The girl angrily exclaimed that there was no need to say anything more. She quickly covered his mouth with her hands and began to think to herself what she should do. A little more, and Kyle would definitely tell everything about the fact that Liam was actually her. Then she would definitely not escape execution, so she could not think of anything better than to grab Crisia by the hand and begin to lead him away from the prince. The young man grinned and said to his Highness, "See you soon." The Crown Prince did not understand what was going on and shouted after them where they were going. On the way, the guy thought that she chose him. Perhaps he is the only one who is happy about this. Lenor thought that Dylan shouldn't find them there, so everything should be fine. Then she apologized to the guy for being in such a hurry and asked if he was still angry. The young man replied that, in fact, he had not held a grudge against her from the very beginning. Loris pushed him to the ground and told him to speak while looking straight into her eyes. She was stubborn and stupid, so if he didn't say it directly, he wouldn't understand anything. The girl didn't even notice that he was angry. After which she burst into tears and began to ask for forgiveness for taking advantage of his kindness without thinking about his feelings. Perhaps now she is disgusting to him. The young man looked at her and thought about how Lenor could be unpleasant to him. Maybe it wasn't so bad that she was shedding tears because of him. Then he asked for forgiveness and said that he was too irritable, but still Loris is very sweet, even when she cries. Our heroine exclaimed that he had really decided to make fun of her again. But the guy replied that he was not doing anything like that. Our heroine was mistaken, he had never joked when it came to her, and he was not going to do so in the future either. The girl was confused and did not understand what he meant. Kyle, sniffing her hair, thought that let her use him even more, to such an extent that she could not live without him, let her head be only him. After some time, Lenor thought that now she feels completely different next to Crisia. Could that be why her heart was beating like crazy? Suddenly she encountered Eldick and Arnold, who stated that she seemed to be Liam's twin sister. The girl was surprised and could not believe that they were the first to speak to her. Then she bowed and thanked them for looking after her brother. She is his older sister, and her name is Lenor Loris. The young man exclaimed that he was pleased to meet her, and that the girl could call him Arnold. Still, rumors about her reached the young man. It seems that their Dylan fell in love, but Eldick pulled him sharply by the ear and said that he must watch his tongue because she was engaged to Vergman. The guy replied that he understood everything, then winked at her and added that if he didn't have a fiancé, he would have hit on her too. The young man introduced himself and said that Arnold was from the knightly faculty. Bahart is studying at the Faculty of Magic, so he doesn't really communicate with lores, but in any case, he's glad to meet them. Arnold exclaimed that another girl was already waiting for him there, so it was time for them to go. They would definitely see each other again. Our heroine thought, what kind of girl is she, although Osman is still a ladies' man? Suddenly Rich ran up to her, shouting where she had suddenly disappeared to. Was she okay? And since when had he and Crisia become so close? After which, she asked that the young man doesn't know that she is pretending to be Liam. Lenor asked why he even thought that. How would Kyle know about it? Vergman asked in surprise why she suddenly called Crisia by name. Did she think that she lacked awareness? Loris does not exercise any caution at all, considering that she has a fiancé. Our heroine didn't understand why he was so angry. She just called Kyle by name. Therefore, she shouted that if he was so unhappy with the fact that she addressed a person by name, then perhaps she could now call him Vergman. The young man exclaimed that no, and asked why she always went to extremes. Lenor continued to yell that how could he even talk to her about awareness, the one who was constantly on expeditions and never even came to her, so the girl doesn't want to hear anything about it. Then she declared that she had had enough and was about to leave, but the young man stopped her and said that if she was going home, he would go with her. Our heroine pulled her hand out of his hands and exclaimed that it was not necessary. She would go alone. On the way, Loras was angry that he always blames only her for everything. That's why he's always angry at her. What's going on in his head anyway? Getting into the carriage, our heroine noticed that the coachman was not the one who brought them here. Perhaps they work in turns. Meanwhile, Eldick was on the street and saw the girl going home. After some time, the carriage stopped abruptly, and the girl flew upside down. She hit her head a little and wondered why they stopped, if something had happened outside. The coachman asked for forgiveness and shouted for the girl to wait a little as the wheel was stuck in the quagmire. Lenor thought that the day had been simply the worst. All these situations had exhausted her to the extreme. Suddenly the doors opened and the crown prince appeared, asking for forgiveness for the intrusion, because the coachman had asked him to help. But he didn't have time to finish the sentence because he saw Lenor Loras in front of him and was very surprised by this. Our heroine was no less shocked than he was and wondered how he even ended up here. After some time, the guy said that it would take time to fix it, so if she didn't mind, she could go with him. That is how our heroine ended up in his carriage. But she was more surprised by something else. Did the crown prince really stop his carriage to help a stranger? The young man was thinking that he still couldn't believe that of all the possible people, it was Lenor Loras who was in that carriage. But there is no need to react so emotionally just because he knows her. It is just an accident and the will of fate. But still, the young people felt incredibly awkward. Dylan kept replaying in his head Kyle's words about wanting to tell the girl's secret. He was very interested in what was there. Therefore, His Highness carefully asked what they had spoken about with Krisha then. Our heroine replied that she had nothing to do with anything that might concern the crown prince, and she thought to herself that she could not say that she had shut him up so that he would not blab her secret. Dylan stated that he is not her fiancé, and it is difficult to call him a friend, so the one who likes her, and it is not mutual, has no right to ask about it. The girl noticed that he was so depressed. Could this really be the same prince who executed her family? Lenor thought to herself that it would probably be better to just say it directly, so she turned to him and exclaimed that she didn't want to seem rude, but she just had to say it. Stop sitting there with such a gloomy face. He must have gotten everything he wanted up until now and taken it for granted, but not everything in life is so easy to get, especially people's feelings. They are not so easy to get. The young man replied that he knew this better than anyone, but he thought to himself that he had not always gotten what he wanted. It had been like this since childhood. Dylan recalled how his mother watched his father through the window and thought that he was going back to that girl and that he had long since stopped caring about her. The baby came to his mother and said that she had him, who would never abandon her. The woman turned around and hissed that it would have been better if she had never given birth to him. Therefore, the crown prince said that there are few things that can only be obtained by force. He was accustomed to being left without anything. Our heroine wanted to tell him something, but the guy put his finger to his lips and told her to sit quietly, while he himself looked out the window. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream and the carriage stopped abruptly, so Lenor almost fell again, but Dylan caught her. When the girl asked what had happened, the young man replied that they had been attacked and were surrounded. The young man ordered her to remain in the carriage and under no circumstances to go outside. Then His Highness took off the pendant and put it on the girl, after which he added that she should not dare to take it off and should keep it with her all this time. At that very moment, His Highness ran outside towards the intruders. There the guy saw many murderers and noted that apparently the convoy had gone ahead. One of the mercenaries stated that the prince himself had really come out for a personal meeting. If he had stayed in the carriage, he could have gone to the next world without fear. Dylan thought to himself that, as he understood, their target was the crown prince, that is, him, and right now Lenor was in the carriage, so the young man should not allow anything to happen to her. The young man will not allow anyone to dare touch her with even a finger. Therefore, the young man immediately entered into close combat with the attackers. When the guy killed some of them, one of them noted that he was strong, but no one should retreat, because this was to be expected. In any case, they had a numerical advantage. Therefore, it is still necessary to kill His Highness and the girl who is in the carriage. Hearing that they weren't the only ones who wanted him, the crown prince grabbed the man by the throat and shouted who their customer was. Another mercenary exclaimed that the guy was going to die now, so there was no point in explaining anything to him. Dylan really hoped that Lenor would manage to escape, because it couldn't be impossible, right? Meanwhile, Loris looked at the decoration and wondered if it was a magic stone that would neutralize any attack with the help of defensive magic. Why did he give it to her? Shouldn't the young man have had it with him? Then the girl looked out the window and saw that His Highness was surrounded. Still, the fact that Dylan, who is the crown prince, is much more important to the country than she, the daughter of the Marquis, is clear even to a fool. Why does the young man fight, risking his own life? Why does he defend it? Suddenly a cry came from the street that they shouldn't forget about the carriage, the girl should be there. His Highness immediately stood in front of the door and thought to himself that he would definitely not allow her to be wounded, even if they killed him. Meanwhile, our heroine noticed that there were several swords behind the sofa. Lenor didn't understand what to do. If she went to help, then perhaps it would be revealed that she was Liam. But if she didn't, then everything could end badly. Dylan thought that he couldn't do anything. If this continued, then she would be in danger. He had to protect her at any cost. Loris suddenly appeared from the carriage and repelled the attack of a mercenary who wanted to attack the crown prince from above, after which she added that His Highness had an open back. Our heroine thought to herself that she must have gone crazy, since she was defending the prince, who was her enemy. When the guy asked why she came out at all, the girl replied that she was the eldest daughter of the Lors family, an honorable line of knights. It would be a shame for the dynasty if they only protected her. She thought to herself that this man was fighting so desperately right before her eyes, so how could she leave him? The crown prince told her not to risk herself. If she felt that she could not cope, then she should leave him and run away. While fending off the attack, Lenor shouted that His Highness should not underestimate her strength. Then she cleverly returned from the other attackers, but one of them managed to pierce her dress with a knife. Dylan immediately came to her aid, threw the enemy back and asked if she was okay. Our heroine silently began to cut the dress she was wearing. To the young man's surprised question about what she was doing, Loris replied that it was all very much a hindrance in battle. At the moment, the most important thing is to sort out the situation, then everything else. The young man noted that she was quite strong. The girl said that it was an honor for her to hear his praise. He noted to himself that her strength was not comparable even to the students of the Knight Faculty Academy. Her swordsmanship and movements are similar to Liam's, perhaps because they are twins. But in any case, they need to escape from this place as soon as possible. The mercenaries noted that the girl was also capable of something, but even so, she was just a girl. She couldn't handle a man if he wasn't alone. But they were deeply mistaken, as our heroine successfully dealt with their blows. Suddenly, the girl felt the chain break and the necklace began to fall to the ground. Lenor fell to the ground to pick it up, but the attacker did not wait and attacked her again. Meanwhile, the crown prince managed to jump on his horse, and he loudly shouted the name of our heroine. When she ran up to him, His Highness caught her with one hand and sat her down next to him, after which the young people began to run away. The mercenaries threw daggers after them, one of which wounded Lors's leg. After some time, the guy noted that they had managed to break away, so they would hide for a while, because sooner or later the security would come to the rescue. Then he handed her his cloak and said that she could not remain like that, let her put it on top. Lenor thanked him, but the young man asked why she had taken such a risk. The girl asked him if he thought he could have dealt with that number of opponents alone. The young man shouted that Loris could have died. Our heroine screamed that she could tell him the same thing. Let him please think about his position, because he is the crown prince of this country. His Highness exclaimed that, who needs such a ruler, whom can he protect at all, if he is not able to protect even his beloved girl? Our heroine asked why he liked someone he had only met a few times. The young man replied that he himself couldn't really understand it, but nevertheless he liked it, and that's all. He constantly thinks about her, hopes for meetings. What else could it be, if not sympathy? What is it, if not falling in love? Lenor exclaimed that she was not the one to ask about this, since he was the crown prince. Therefore, he cannot so frivolously talk about his feelings to someone who is not his fiancé. The guy objected that she was really asking him to keep these feelings to himself for the rest of his life. The girl exclaimed that she was not talking about this, but she thought to herself that she was losing her composure while talking to him. The young man continued to shout that he would not be able to convey his feelings unless he expressed them in words. Lores replied that that's exactly it. Let him stop saying that he likes her. Just like that. Then the young people both froze and simply looked into each other's eyes. Having calmed down a bit, Dylan said that they had found something to do at such a time. The girl replied that, indeed, the occasion was not suitable. The young man noted that this was the first time he saw her laugh, which was simply delightful, but she had a fiancé, and he understood that he had to give up the thought of her, but even so, he did not cease to like her. Suddenly, Liam appeared before his eyes, and the crown prince did not understand why he remembered him now. Suddenly, the girl began to lose all knowledge, and His Highness managed to catch her so that she would not hit herself. Our heroine muttered that for some reason it became difficult for her to breathe, plus her leg hurt a lot. The crown prince immediately pulled the cloak off her leg and saw that it was a slow-acting poison. Those criminals put it on the weapon. If they don't figure it out as soon as possible, her life will be in danger. The young man has a poor immunity to such substances but has no choice but to try. Then he said that perhaps it would be unpleasant, but let him endure it, even if it would be very painful, and began to suck the poison out of his leg. Our heroine first told him that it was not necessary, but then she felt herself becoming ill again. Sometime later, at the Imperial Castle, Kyle was treating Lenor with magic. Chrysia thought about why this happened to her, but he would save the girl at any cost. When the youth came to the rest of Phaseus, Arnold immediately exclaimed how her condition was. The young man replied that everything was fine, and that he had done everything he could. The guy breathed a sigh of relief and said that Kyle calmed him down. When he was told that Dylan and Miss Lors were attacked, he was just beside himself. The young man added that there is one thing. He believes that the poison that is currently affecting her is related to forbidden magic. Although after several procedures the poison and the effect of the forbidden magic itself should disappear, a scar may remain. If she remains at peace, she will soon wake up and her strength will return to her. His Highness said that he was glad to hear this, but in the meantime he would go and visit her. Chrysia hissed that he had just said how Dylan could be happy even though they would be left with a scar. After which he began to influence the crown prince with the help of magic. When Arnold exclaimed what he was doing, the guy replied that they really thought that His Highness had the right to see her. All this happened to her only because of his fault. The very thing that made her suffer and that she was hurt was all because Dylan got her involved in it. Osmond told him to calm down. The crown prince was also attacked. He cannot be blamed for everything. His Highness muttered that he really thought it was all because of him. Chrysia asked what it was all about. Why doesn't he do something about his stupid, emotionally uncontrollable nature? Taking this opportunity, I will speak frankly. The prince has always acted recklessly, thereby creating problems. It is better to pay attention to this, especially in relation to her. It was because of Dylan that strange rumors appeared. If the young man is not able to protect her, then let him not come near her again. His Highness asked why he should listen to this from him and who Lenor Lors was to him anyway. The young man replied that he should not be misunderstood. He was saying this because of Liam. Because hurting Lenor is the same as hurting him, let him remember that. The crown prince did not understand what all this meant, why the young man's name had even surfaced now. When our heroine came to, she immediately asked where she was. Bergman immediately hugged her and exclaimed that he was very glad that everything worked out. Dad asked how she was feeling. Mom added that they were told that she fainted because of the poison. Lenor replied that she was fine, but immediately exclaimed, "What about His Highness? How is he in general?" Suddenly the cat replied that Dylan was fine, so he should calm down. Our heroine was taken aback by the fact that the animal was talking and couldn't even get a word out. She replied that it was Liam and that her sister shouldn't worry. Loris exclaimed what happened to him and why he became so cute. The guy replied that the crown prince would have revealed that Liam was him, so he let the entrance into magic. When the parents left, Rich said that he had to see her off properly and that he should forgive her for having to face danger. The girl replied that it was not his fault. The guy said that he would take her home, but she lost her temper and replied that she would go alone. Then the boys began to argue with each other about who was more to blame. Liam shouted that it was no one's fault, so this squabble was pointless, and there was a more important conversation. The guy said he didn't know if she wanted to have this conversation right after waking up, but he wanted to know about what happened. All the criminals escaped and there were no victims left at the crime scene. They were unable to find any evidence that could lead them to the customer. Our heroine was very surprised that there was no trace left. Is that possible? The young man replied that most likely they had removed everything that could become evidence, and not without the help of magic. Apparently, the enemy was a master of it. But the young man will definitely find it, because he cannot forgive the one who dared to hurt her. Now he is returning to the order and will join the investigation, since she suffered from the curse of poison. Let her rest. When Rich left, Liam said that it was a poison curse, just like Vergman said, and forbidden magic was used on him. Lenor exclaimed, "What does this all mean? How is this even possible?" The younger brother replied that yes, he was talking about magic, which had become illegal due to its danger. All written information about it had been destroyed, and what remained was under the control of the imperial family. The young man added that it seemed that there were still people who owned it, since he controlled the minds of people, took away the escorts, and forced them to attack them. The girl noted that it turned out that she was involved in the secret murder of the crown prince. The guy replied that no, whatever, these were just guesses, but perhaps their target was not only the prince but also the sister. The fact that all traces and evidence of their presence were removed suggests that by getting rid of her and His Highness Dylan, they wanted to present the circumstances as a betrayal of the Lor's family. Our heroine was horrified and exclaimed that why would anyone need this? The young man replied that perhaps they were plotting to bring down the Lor's line and weaken the absolute power of the imperial family. If you think about it that way, then her past makes sense. The version that there is a behind-the-scenes mastermind is becoming stronger. Lenor thought that the prince definitely fought to protect her. You wouldn't even think that this is the same person who executed them. Loris hopes that if everything is as his brother says, then he is not the one behind the scenes. As the younger brother jumped out of bed, our heroine asked where he was going. The young man explained that they had too little information, so he was going to study past incidents, taking as a basis the incidents with the crew associated with His Highness. Our heroine exclaimed that she should wait because she also wanted to go. Hiding around the corner, they heard the maids talking, saying that it was the first time they had seen the prince so calm, and that they would like it to be like that all the time. It was hard when he was raging. Even though it was a long time ago, but nothing can be done, the guy was raised by an empress who was comparable to the devil. Since they were heading in their direction, the brother suggested hiding in one of the rooms. The girls continued their conversation about how one can hate one's mother, knowing what she went through. One of them replied that she even felt sorry for her. Finding themselves in some bedroom, the guys noted that it was dark there and it seemed like there was no one there. I wonder what kind of room it was. Liam decided to light up the room using his magical abilities. They immediately saw in front of them a huge portrait depicting some pink-haired woman. The twins were shocked at how much she looked like Lenor. Suddenly, a voice came from the corridor, saying that he had heard something there. Our hero noted that things were bad. But when the maids opened the doors, they saw no one and decided that they had imagined it. The girl said that it was strange, because she was sure that she had heard voices. The other exclaimed that she would like to enter this room only in extreme cases and out of necessity. Lenor was surprised at first that they didn't see her, until she noticed that she had also turned into a cat, and her brother noted that he had made it in time. The girl looked at the portrait and said that no matter how much she looked at it, she still felt creepy every time. Another noted that this is the same empress who died 10 years ago. She is very beautiful. Another answered that no one denies it. But if we talk about character, then the woman looked like the devil to them. Her emotions were comparable to waves, and how many times had she observed her icy attitude towards His Highness Dylan? She was terribly attached to the Emperor when he went away to meet his mistresses. Her cruelty knew no bounds. It was terrible to deal with her. Perhaps these are all rumors, of course, but they say that the woman brutally killed not only his lovers, but also his children. The maid also heard that because Dylan, who is her own child, had the Emperor's facial features, she attempted to kill him as well. But in the end, the Empress committed suicide by drinking poison. This incident broke the Crown Prince, but this is understandable. Our heroine could not even imagine that His Highness had such a difficult past. The maids continued to say that, if you think about it, Dylan is obsessed with that young lady, and she looks like the Empress, like two peas in a pod. As she was leaving, the girl said that it was hard to imagine anyone falling in love with the Crown Prince. Knowing what cruel blood flows in him, it was just funny. Lenor muttered that His Highness really had tried to kill his own mother. Liam replied that he didn't know either. They must have forbidden talking about it because for the imperial family this could only turn out to be a minus. Loris said that perhaps the Crown Prince paid so much attention to them because they were like the Empress. She could sympathize with him, but she could not forgive so easily what happened in the past. But still, it is unpleasant for her to hear the maids laughing at His Highness in such a manner. What kind of strange feeling is this? The brother said that, be that as it may, the investigation still came first on the list of things to do. After that he would conduct another one of his own, and that the sister should quickly return to her bedroom and rest. Finally, he dropped the phrase that the transformation into a cat would wear off over time. Our heroine exclaimed that he was really talking about her returning in that form. After some time, our heroine realized that she was lost. This castle was so big and in general, where was she at the moment? Then she saw some room and decided to enter it, but on the way, she bumped into someone's leg. It was the Crown Prince who looked at her in surprise and asked himself where the cat came from. While she was thinking that now it was impossible to stand still, but it was necessary to run, the young man bent down and began to pick her up in his arms. Pressing her to himself, the young man noted that she was so soft and smelled very nice. Why did she come in? Perhaps she was looking for a place to rest, or maybe she was simply lost. In any case, Dylan envies her because she has the freedom to wander wherever she wants. If he could turn into a cat, he would have no problem coming to see that very person, but she probably doesn't care about his rantings. Then Her Highness hugged our heroine and noted that she was simply incredibly sweet. At that very moment, the magic stopped working and Lenor turned back into herself. Our heroine did not understand what to do now, why the magic dissipated at that very moment. What kind of excuse could one even come up with in such a situation? The young man cautiously asked if this was some kind of dream. It must be because he has been thinking about her constantly for so long. Loris exclaimed that, indeed, it was all a dream. He must have been very tired these last few days. His Highness muttered that now she also appears in his dreams. Then he took our heroine by the face and said that he was very sorry that he couldn't protect her then. The guy made her go through a terrible experience. The girl did not understand what it was, frankness due to despair or what, because he thought it was a dream. The young man began to say that perhaps a scar would remain if that were the case, but suddenly he stopped and added that if he said so, he would cause her problems again. The young man had been meaning to apologize for a long time. He had done very violent things. Dylan has put her in a difficult position more than once, imposing his feelings, not giving any importance to the fact that she has a fiancé. He is very sorry. The guy just wanted to see her smile, but as he sees it, he chose the wrong course of action. It was always like that. Lenor thought to herself that how could he force her and then apologize so delicately? She understood that he was a prince and could be dangerous, but she couldn't ignore the expression on Dylan's face when he looked at her. The prince, the one she had only met a few times and didn't understand what he meant when he said he liked her, but now she realized that because Dylan didn't know what it was like to be loved, he didn't know how to show love. But the past of the Crown Prince has nothing to do with our heroine. So our heroine got up from his lap and said that the dream was coming to an end. But His Highness asked her not to leave and immediately grabbed her hand, after which the young man pulled her onto the bed so that she lay down next to him. Then the Crown Prince asked her not to leave him. Even in her sleep, he wanted the girl to be close by. Lenor asked who His Highness saw in her, since she was sure that he didn't like her. Most likely, the Crown Prince sought the love that he could never get from his mother in her, who resembled the Empress. The young man exclaimed that nothing of the sort. He really liked her. The girl screamed that he shouldn't talk so frivolously about liking someone. He should save these words for a dear person, his future partner. She thought to herself that he was an unhappy young man, starved for love, but she was not a replacement for him and could not reciprocate these feelings. The young man replied that he did not believe that such a person would appear except her. Loris replied that he would definitely appear, but for this His Highness would need to change. If Liam is right, and the behind-the-scenes mastermind really does exist, then if the prince is left, the tragedy will repeat itself. But if he is helped, the prince may change. His Highness asked what he should do, how to change. If he succeeded, would she be with him? The girl replied that he already understood how to do it himself, because the guy had already begun to change. The young man apologized to her for what had happened before. If he could leave the past behind and be as honest with other people as he was now, then one day he would meet a person who would accept him for who he was. After which our heroine wished him good night and jumped off the balcony. The young man noted that it seemed that he now needed to keep her in his head less, and surprisingly, despite the fact that he was rejected, Dylan does not feel bad. Noticing that his older sister was falling down, Liam immediately made her wings with the help of magic. The young man exclaimed that why did she jump from such a height, because it was dangerous. Lenor replied that she saw him and did not think any further, because she knew that he would do something. The guy said that if she did something like that again, she would not know what would happen. Our heroine asked him how the investigation went there in general. The young man replied that not really, but he managed to learn something about forbidden magic. Then she added that it would be better to talk about this in her room, so it was worth going there. Loris looked at the balcony and mentally addressed the prince, that if after this he could change, he could be trusted. After some time, the brother reported that regarding the recent incident, for the most part, everything was as he said. The girl muttered that there was someone who used forbidden magic. That's what he said. The guy replied that, yes, magic is dangerous and risky. It was banned by the imperial family hundreds of years ago, and the corresponding books are under its control. Based on this information, it is likely that this person could have secretly obtained them from somewhere, or he is so powerful that he has access to these books. Since using forbidden magic requires a decent amount of magic itself, only powerful wizards are under suspicion. Our heroine immediately thought of Kyle and Eldic. Their families lead the imperial faction, but would they betray the prince? The youth continued that, recalling the poison incident at the academy, it seemed that all incident reports and the like within the academy were under the control of the Duke Bahart family. Lenor was sure that if they asked to see it, they would not be allowed to do so. When everyone had already returned to Fortis, Arnold stretched and said that the summer holidays were over. They had flown by in the blink of an eye. He then grabbed Eldic by the neck and said that there was little time left before the battle of sword and magic, so it was time to show his fighting spirit and train. When they had left, the prince immediately turned to Kyle and thanked him for not standing on ceremony with him that day. Chryssia replied that nothing like that, he probably showed excessive emotionality then too, so let him forgive him. Or he should say that he felt awkward because he was so frank. His Highness replied that he himself had thought that he needed to change. The young man asked why suddenly did something good happen. He dares to assume that it is connected with Lenor. The Crown Prince replied that no, he had been rejected without hope of a chance. The young man was surprised and asked if he had really confessed his feelings to her. When the boy replied that it was in a dream, the young man said that he did not understand what it meant. He thought to himself that when did this happen? Because he thought that the prince's persistence could have an effect on her, so thick-skinned. But how is it that even Dylan was rejected? His Highness added that he had certainly been rejected, but now he thought it was for the best. She had suggested the direction in which he should move. The young man noted that he had a completely clear expression on his face, and he had not seen him like that for a long time, just like Dylan had been around for a long time. But this is also a cause for concern. The prince he knew was tough, determined. They always adored him. After the incident with the Empress, he became much tougher and closed himself off. If the old Dylan had returned, Lenor would have undoubtedly liked him too. After some time, the young man approached our heroine and, bowing, asked for forgiveness for what happened before. He should have apologized even earlier. He is very sorry that he hurt him so many times and does not expect the guy to forgive him after one apology. But now His Highness will try very hard to change, so if Loris doesn't mind, then wouldn't he like to be friends with him? Lenor asked if he promises not to hurt people anymore. The guy exclaimed that yes, he swears on the name of Dylan von Vasilios. The girl replied that she had heard His Highness, but she thought to herself that it was still too early to trust him completely, but that this would become possible depending on his actions. The Crown Prince asked if he would mind being called by his first name. Our heroine smiled and replied that, okay, Dylan, then he can just call him Liam. The young man began to think that perhaps he was the one he had liked all this time, but then he began to convince himself that this was some kind of misunderstanding, and that this could not be. The Battle of Swords and Magic is an annual 3-day tournament that determines the best among the 4 prestigious academies representing the Vasilios Empire. The so-called desperate battle, in which competition is ruthless, the winners of the competition receive by no means only honor. The best among the Knights category, instead of in the Imperial Guard among the Magicians category, a place in the Court Magic Division. They will be able to take advantage of this opportunity after graduating from the educational institution if they wish. This is what guarantees prospects and is a chance to gain glory for the family. When the time for the tournament arrived, Agni exclaimed that at last the day had come. It is very interesting to see what the participants from other academies will be like. When they entered the waiting room of the Fortis Academy, they saw the prince and the girl greeted him simply by name. While her friend was surprised that she approached him so simply, Dylan said that he thought his name was Agni, after which he added that if it wasn't too much trouble for him, then wouldn't the guy help him with the stretch, let him press on his back. Lenor exclaimed that her friend didn't expect such a turn of events, so he was a little afraid because touching the body of the crown prince was not an ordinary event. His Highness replied that he indeed apologized since he had spoken without thinking. While the young man was surprised that the prince apologized so openly and that Liam spoke so confidently, our heroine said that she would do it instead of him. After which she approached him and began to help the young man with stretching. Lenor leaned over and whispered in his ear that his body was a little hard. The guy started to panic that he was too close. He was just recently rejected by his older sister, so what kind of feeling is this then? Sometime later in the infirmary, Kyle continued the magical treatment of her leg from the poison. When the guy said he was done, the girl thanked him with all her heart. Chrysia asked if she was seriously considering participating in a battle of swords and magic in such a state. Lenor replied that, of course, she had set herself the goal of winning for the sake of her dynasty. The guy asked where such self-confidence came from. She still needs continuous treatment. Why not refuse then? If she gets hurt again, he will not treat her anymore. Our heroine noted that although the young man says so, he still continues to court her. Kyle is so capricious. The girl exclaimed that she had absolutely no wounds and that she could do everything to win. Chrysia whispered in her ear that then, if she gets hurt and needs his help, he will punish her. After some time, it was announced that the Battle of Swords and Magic would open again this year. This time, a special place of judge is given to a student of the Fortis Academy, a member of the Order of the Imperial Guard, Rich Vergman. Now it is time to immediately invite the participants. Ahead of them all are several of the best students of the prestigious Honorable Fortis Academy. The mighty students of the First Academy for Young Men of St. Ardra. Next come the students of Libertas Academy, emitting some kind of mysterious aura. Also, finally, those who bring this competition to life are the students of Pandel's Girls Academy. Upon seeing the blue-haired girl, Agni exclaimed that this was Mrs. Jessica. Our heroine clarified that this was some famous person. The young man replied that they said that among the swordswomen, she was the one who was closest to the Order of the Imperial Guard. She is, of course, good at fencing, but it is also worth noting the beauty's composure. He admires her. Lenor thought to herself that she had noticed this before, but still, her friend was a real fanatic, and in this way reminded her of her mother. Suddenly, Arnold threw himself on her neck and exclaimed that he had not seen her for a long time, but really wanted to. The girl immediately started pushing him away from her and getting indignant about what he was even allowing himself to do at the opening ceremony. How many times had she told him to stop? Everyone present looked at this with their mouths open and did not understand what was happening at all. The girl bowed and said that this was their first meeting. She was a second-year student at the Pandel's Academy for Girls, and her name was Jessica Vinegar. The young man explained that she was his childhood friend. They shouldn't underestimate her just because she was a woman. This lady would give them a very painful experience. You wouldn't know it from looking at her, but she was extremely strong. Trying to hug her, the guy added that, in addition to everything, she had always been a beauty, but now she had become even more beautiful. Jessica immediately dodged and said that, although, as he put it, she was a childhood friend, but putting his hand on her thigh was too much. There are simply no words for such outrageous, disgraceful behavior. Arnold asked why she was so angry because they once held hands. The girl replied that it was in the past. Besides, now they were enemies, so there was no need to act friendly with her. Lena Lee noted that although they are childhood friends, their relationship leaves much to be desired. The prince responded that who would have thought that some ladies would treat a guy who is so good at communicating with them with such coldness. Kyle replied that it was the other way around. He thinks that she really likes the young man. The guys didn't understand how she could like him with such behavior. Apparently, they don't understand the relationships between guys and girls. Eldick added that Arnold is simply not as thick-skinned as they are. He thinks that the guy understands her feelings and on this basis behaves so frivolously. While the prince and our heroine were thinking about whether they really needed to get into this, Jessica came up to them and said that she was glad to meet Mr. Liam Loris. The girl has heard that he is a strong swordsman who fights as gracefully as the girl can, and they will fight in this round. She has a request that during the competition she show all her strength, without any restraint. Lena Lee noted that she has amazing self-confidence. She is determined to hold out at least until the third round, and this paints her even more beautiful. Therefore she replied that, of course, he would be glad to fight, showing all his strength. Vinegar noted to herself that his spirit seemed unwavering. Perhaps he was underestimating her because she was a girl, but the lady would never lose. The girl then announced that she had to go get ready for the round and began to walk away. Looking after her, Loris thought that if she appeared before her in the guise of a girl, they could become friends, comrades, mutually holding swords in their hands. Sometime later, our heroine was thinking that since the competition was starting tomorrow, she needed to have a good rest and went looking for her room, which Rich had spoken about. The girl managed to find it after all, and when she went in, she noted that the room was quite spacious. She was very glad that Bergman was on the executive committee at the convention. Because of this, they were given a separate room, and she should thank him. Her leg suddenly hurts. Lena Lee doesn't think about this wound most of the time, but sometimes it throbs, so she needs to apply the ointment that Kyle gave her. So our heroine took off her pants and began to treat her with medicine. Suddenly, a half-naked young man came out of the shower, and Lena Lee did not expect to see him at all. The girl had only one question in her head. Why was Rich in her room, and on top of that, naked? Meanwhile, the prince stood near the door to their room and thought that he had come to Bergman on one matter. As a member of the jury, he clearly had a lot of work, so he came himself. Isn't that worthy of admiration? Meanwhile, the stunned young man asked Lena Lee what she was doing in his room, but the main question was why in that form. While the girl was trying to figure out what to answer, there was a knock at the door. When the prince's voice was heard asking if Bergman was busy, the boys began to panic. The young man grabbed her by the hand and began to quickly drag her into the closet. When Dylan entered the bedroom, he noticed that there was no one there, but the door was open, which was very careless. Meanwhile, in the closet, our heroine asked Bergman why he hid at all. The young man apologized and replied that it just happened by itself. Lena Lee added that now, besides she is Liam, was there any need to hide at all? The guy thought to himself that now her appearance was indecent even for his brother's appearance. He should under no circumstances allow other men to see her. Our heroine, meanwhile, was thinking about why, at just such a moment, he found himself naked. Then she placed her hands on the young man's torso and noted that he had simply amazing muscles, absolutely not what he had before. The young man grabbed her hand and asked if she even understood the situation they were in. Bergman is a guy, and this is her way of kindling feelings. Does our heroine really think that he will be able to control himself? As Rich reached out to kiss her, the crown prince suddenly opened the closet doors and found this picture. His Highness muttered that he simply heard rustling sounds, which is why he decided to check, but what were they doing there together anyway? Besides, what kind of appearance do they have? Rich immediately asked for forgiveness for the fact that they appeared before him in indecent guises. Coming out of the closet, the young man told Liam to put on his pants immediately too. Our heroine angrily wondered why the young man had left her alone with the crown prince. When the girl said that she would now go get dressed, Dylan saw a poison imprint on her leg. His Highness immediately noted that it was the same scar as Lena Lee Lors, and that rose also signified forbidden magic. The young man immediately grabbed her and said that he saw a scar on her leg, so wasn't it Lena Lee by chance? Our heroine did not understand what to do, since the prince had exposed her. Rich entered the room and told Liam to get dressed immediately because he looked indecent. The girl noted to herself that he had appeared at the right time, so she exclaimed that Dylan apparently had some business with him, and he would go about his business. His Highness wondered if he had made a mistake, but that couldn't be, because the location and shape were absolutely the same. Such coincidences simply don't happen. His thoughts were interrupted by Bergman's voice, who asked him what business he had come for, but the prince had completely forgotten about it. After some time, she was already complaining to Kyle, who stated that she had finally been exposed and everything was getting more interesting. He would have loved to be there and see the expression on Dylan's face. The girl exclaimed that it was enough to have fun. She was absolutely serious. What should she do? This is the end anyway. Seeing the wound, he definitely exposed her as Lena Lee. It couldn't be worse. And now she's probably facing execution. The young man replied that indeed, if they had been talking about the former prince, anything could have been expected from him, but now he was sure His Highness would never have done such a thing. He thought to himself that, on the contrary, if the guy found out that Liam was none other than Lenely, he would rather be happy, but kill me, the young man will not find out about this. Our heroine exclaimed, "What to do now? How can this be played out?" The young man replied that there was only one way. She needed to prove to Dylan that she was a guy. Then Kyle pushed her down on the couch and said that he told her that she should be ready for anything. Taking off his shirt, he added that if she came into the guy's room alone, then no matter what happened to her, there was no need to object. Our heroine lay there and didn't understand why he was undressing at all. The young man noted that she couldn't even resist now, could she? Lenely screamed at him to let her go immediately. What was going on? Chrysia replied that no way, because she doesn't want the prince to reveal that Loris is a girl and he will help her with this. When he tried to take off her shirt, the girl screamed that he couldn't do that. Meanwhile, His Highness sat and thought about the fact that, it turns out, all this time Liam was Lena Lee. Maybe that's true, but why did she go so far and take on the appearance of a guy and then enter the academy? If that is the case, then what happened between them before was still with her. What a horror. It is understandable that after that she does not like him, rather the opposite. Now all her indignation towards him that was before is understandable, but despite the fact that all this time he was deceived, he is even glad that Liam turned out to be her. The thoughts were interrupted by Arnold's voice, who said that he had been acting strange lately, and if something was bothering him, he should just say so. His Highness exclaimed what he would do if Liam Loris turned out to be a girl. The guy asked if Dylan had hit his head by accident. He would have said that there was no way that someone so good with the ball could be a lady. The young man muttered that, indeed, he should just forget about it. He thought to himself that, no matter how you look at it, that scar was the same as hers, so what should he do now? How could he best communicate with her? Sometime later, Jessica was training on her own. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her leg, so she sat down. Then she thought that with such a level of pain, she still couldn't stop, because she couldn't play for anything in order to protect Mr. Arnold. Suddenly, the voice of a young man was heard who said that it was enough already. As soon as he left her for a little while, she immediately began to swing her sword. The young man will be her opponent for one battle, and that's all. The lady objected that she should become even stronger, but the guy retorted that if she overexerts herself, she will not become stronger. Literally a moment later, the young men began their battle. Osmond turned out to be stronger than her, so he immediately knocked the sword out of her hands. Breathing heavily, the girl replied that this was expected from Arnold. The guy said that she had hurt her right leg and apparently thought that if she tried so hard to hide it, no one would find out about it. Jessica replied that such a bruise is not a problem and she will be able to participate in the competition. But Arnold said that it hurts, so what is she even talking about? Of course she is annoyed, but it would be better to refuse to participate. Suddenly the girl burst into tears and exclaimed that no way she would not refuse. The young man asked why she was so fixated on chivalry, since she was from a good family, talented, and after all, such a beauty. After graduating from the academy, Vinegar will be very popular among families looking for a good marriage, so let her not be so reckless and take things easier. Even if she doesn't become a knight, she can live and find her own happiness as a woman. This can't be a bad option. Jessica thought to herself that she had always liked him, but she was sure that, being from the family of a count, she was not a candidate for the role of his wife, but rather the son of the family of a duke. But she still wants to be close, so the girl decided to become a knight who will protect him. If she shows good results at this Congress, then there is a chance that she will be recognized as the best. Then she turned to Mr. Arnold and asked if he would stand by her side even if she had no value as a knight. The guy replied that what other values, let him not say such terrible things. Vinegar screamed that she simply saw no other way to be with him than this, after which the girl turned around and began to quickly run away. Eldrick's voice came from the side asking if she was being too stubborn. The guy noted that it meant he was eavesdropping and what a hobby he had. The young man replied that he just happened to be nearby. More importantly, her feelings, he shares them so he could be a little more affectionate. Arnold replied that danger accompanies the Osmond family and he only does not want it to touch her. After some time, Jessica wondered if Mr. Arnold really had no need for her. Suddenly, her leg began to hurt again and she wanted to rub it, but she heard a voice from the side that asked if it would relieve her of this pain. Vinegar immediately grabbed her sword and exclaimed who the hell he was. The man replied that there was no need to be so careful, after which he began to influence her bruise with the help of magic and asked if what was bothering her was going away. Jessica asked who he was and why he needed all this. The stranger replied that he thought he would tell her something interesting, after which he began to say that the opponent she would fight was Liam Lores. His real personality was a little different. After some time, the third battle of this year's tournament was already approaching, so it's time to welcome the next players, the first of which is Pandela Academy student Jessica Vinegar. Her opponent is a student from Fortis Academy, Liam Lores. All this time, the Crown Prince couldn't get the idea out of his head that if he really was a girl, then he liked Lenor from the very beginning. Our heroine said that she would give it her all, as she promised. Noticing her angry look, the girl noted that something was clearly wrong with her. As soon as it was announced that sparring could begin, Jessica immediately rushed into the attack. Lenor noted that everything is as Arnold said. The lady is incredibly strong. She moves truly mesmerizingly, as if she were not fighting but performing a dance. After making another blow, Vinegar hissed that she wouldn't let her go so easily. Liam is actually a girl, isn't he? Lenor didn't understand how she knew. Had rumors already started spreading? Our heroine, just in case, objected that it was obvious that he was a guy. The girl screamed that only her lie was obvious here. She would never lose to her. She thought to herself that in order to be close to Mr. Osmond, she would fight with all her despair, and also she would never let go of a man who pretended to be a guy for fun. After which she attacked our heroine again and exclaimed that today her mask would be torn off. Jessica, with deft movements, left cuts on Lenor, who stated that she knows her true identity, but why is she so angry? Suddenly a loud voice was heard saying, "Kill!" After this, Vinegar fell to her knees and seemed to be in great pain. Our heroine did not understand what had just happened and who to kill. Could it really be her? When Jessica attacked her again, Lenor noted that she had become even stronger than she had just been. The girl screamed to run away as quickly as possible as her body moved on its own. While Lores was thinking that she was acting strangely and maybe someone was controlling her, Vinegar knocked the sword out of her hands, after which the opponent swung in order to deliver the decisive blow. But suddenly the Crown Prince and Arnold appeared, whose swords clashed. His Highness hissed that she had just been about to kill Liam. Osmond asked the question whether it is possible to raise a sword against a girl. Dylan cried out for the young man to immediately lower his sword. Arnold objected that he could tell him the same thing, but he had to be aware of the consequences. His Highness immediately shouted that this round could be considered suspended and would be inconclusive. Hearing this, Jessica screamed that she couldn't allow this. Victory in this battle was hers, and in general, there was no need for this competition in the first place. Dylan asked what it meant, but thought to himself that, compared to yesterday, she was acting extremely strange. Vinegar screamed that this meant that this so-called Liam was pretending to be someone other than who he really was, and he had no right to take part in this tournament. Osmond tried to calm her down, but she screamed that this man was a girl, after which Vinegar just started to lose consciousness, and the guy immediately caught her, saying that it looks like she's a little tired and that's why she's not herself. Let Dylan forgive her. The guy didn't understand why Jessica revealed her identity publicly, so he said that when this girl wakes up, there are many things she will have to clarify.